I caught my parents stealing my dog's surgery fund and kicking him, but I escaped with him, and my grandma took us in to fight back. This is the story of when I realized just how far my parents would go to get what they wanted, and how far I'd go to protect the one thing I couldn't afford to lose. I saved my dog's life by refusing to sleep. It wasn't a choice, I had no other option. My family had a rule: lights out, no exceptions. But when my best friend suggested we find a new teammate because I couldn't keep up, I knew something had to change. What happened next? I learned how far my parents would go to get what they wanted, and how I had to outsmart them to protect the one thing that mattered most. I saved my dog's life by refusing to sleep. My family had the harshest nighttime rules of everyone I know. 8 p.m. This entailed turning off the lights and the consoles, and when my sole friend in the world suggested to our clan, maybe we should find a different teammate who can actually play, I realized I needed to find a way out. She was the one person who didn't mind that I was the quirky kid in school. Losing her meant losing everything. I learned to sleep totally still with my eyes closed, breathing so evenly that Mom's flashlight checks never detected me. Even my dog Max would sneak into my room and wag his tail as if he were pleased for me. But one night, something odd occurred. My parents arrived at 11:30 p.m., and through slightly parted eyes, I saw my mother open my piggy bank while Dad held his phone flashlight. "Take $70 from his piggy bank and $50 from the Pokemon cards he sold," she said quietly, calculating cash. Then came the part that made my blood freeze. Mom moved to my desk and picked up the jar labeled Max's surgery fund in my handwriting. "$40 here," she said, dumping it into her purse. "Max is old anyway. This money might treble during tonight's game." I felt as if I had been hit in the gut. Every money I made went towards their gambling while they thought I was sleeping. The following few weeks became a bizarre game of cat and mouse. At supper, I casually commented, "Max seems sicker lately." My parents exchanged a short glance that told me everything. Mom confronted me at breakfast the following morning. "Your phone was warm when I checked on you." She paid close attention to my face. "Must have been from charging," I said while pouring breakfast. "It was not plugged in." I paused for half a second too long. "Sometimes I sleep on it." "Body heat." She nodded, but I could see the skepticism in her gaze. My parents soon began testing me, demonstrating how they were documenting everything. "Explain this," my father asked one evening, giving me a photo of my charger. "Yesterday it was by your bed. Today it's by your desk." I shrugged, attempting to appear perplexed. "I must move it without thinking." He took out another shot. "What about Tuesday? Wednesday? Different spots every day." My throat dried up. "I'm reorganizing my room." We stared at each other till Mom called us to dinner. The idea of my knowing the truth drove them insane. They expanded their investigation with careful observation. "Found this in your trash," Mom remarked, holding out a Snickers wrapper like evidence in court. "The expiration date is December 2023. It's January. Someone gave it to me at school." "Someone gave you expired candy?" She placed the wrapper on the counter between us. "And you ate it at night after brushing your teeth?" "I forgot to throw it away earlier." She knew what I was saying. I knew she knew. But she couldn't prove it. Meanwhile, Max's limp was becoming worse by the day, and we were running out of time. They began taking photos of my room every night, comparing the locations of everything from my slippers to my school books. When my Discord account appeared online at midnight, Mom treated it as a smoking gun. "Technical glitch," I insisted. "Discord's been weird lately." She opened my cousin's Instagram. "Is this a glitch too? You liked his post at 11:38 p.m. "I think someone hacked me," I mumbled. She just gazed at me, and I stared back, knowing the truth but not acknowledging it. The probe reached a climax when Dad revealed at dinner. "Bad news, buddy. You only have $110 saved for Max." "That's not nearly enough." They scrutinized my expression, waiting for surprise or wrath. Mom's fingers grasped the fork so tightly that her knuckles became white. They were frustrated when I simply nodded regretfully. Max must have sensed something, as he limped over and placed his head on my lap. The silence lasted so long that I could hear everyone's breathing. That night, I overheard them planning outside my door. "We'll test him again tomorrow night. Go straight for the dog." The following evening, at 10 p.m., they stood outside my room. Then I heard them walk over to where Max was sleeping near my bed. "Look at this pathetic mutt," Dad exclaimed loudly. "Can barely walk." "Probably won't last another month anyway," my mother said. Waste of money even trying to save him, should have gotten rid of him years ago. I remained motionless, but my entire body shook with wrath. Then Dad did something that devastated me. He took 3 steps and kicked Max's ribs. I shot up before I could control myself. "Don't you dare touch him!" They spun around triumphantly. "We knew it, you've been faking this whole time," Dad yelled. The room burst after months of lies on both sides. "You've been stealing from Grandma too," I added gently. "Phone is already recording." They froze. "Her banking app on my phone. She asked me to monitor it after the money went missing." Dad reached for my phone, but I had already clicked submit on the family group chat. That night, I overheard them planning outside my door. "Tomorrow night we'll say we're putting Max down. If he doesn't react, he's really asleep." At 11 p.m., they stood outside my room. Mom's voice broke with phony tears. "I can't believe we have to put Max to sleep tomorrow." Dad said, "We have no choice. There isn't enough money." They must have sensed something because they burst through the door. I was sitting up, phone in hand, and recording everything. "You monsters. How could you put Max down?" I yelled. "We knew it. You've been faking this whole time," Dad yelled back. The room burst after months of lies on both sides. "You've been stealing from Grandma too," I added gently. "Her banking app on my phone. She asked me to monitor it after the money went missing." Dad reached for my phone, but I had already clicked submit on the family group chat. The message went through, and my phone began to buzz with notifications from aunts, uncles and cousins who were all watching the video at the same time. Mom reached for my phone again, and I twisted away from her, sliding backward toward my bedroom door, as Max cowered behind my legs. Dad's face got red, and he began yelling something about respect, but I couldn't hear him through the blood hammering in my ears. My phone started lighting up with texts, and I saw Grandma's name appear, indicating that she was on her way right now. Mom grabbed at me again, and this time her nails grazed my arm as I dodged across the corridor. Max limped after me as fast as he could, while Dad threatened to take away my phone forever. I dashed into the bathroom and slammed the door shut, twisting the lock just as Dad's punch struck the wood. Max was shivering against my leg, so I dropped to my knees to see where Dad had booted him. His ribs felt fine, but when I touched the region, he moaned and trembled. Through the door, I could hear Mom on her phone, her voice high and frightened as she tried to explain to someone that it wasn't as it appeared. Dad kept beating on the bathroom door, asking that I come out and delete everything right away. My phone already showed 36 messages in the family conversation, and more continued to arrive. Some family wondered if this was true, while others were already angry. Mom's voice grew louder as she spoke to what sounded like her sister, claiming that we were only scolding the dog and that I was being dramatic. Max moved closer to me, and I hugged him tightly, felt his heart race as rapidly as mine. They spent 35 minutes alternating between threats and phony charming voices in an attempt to convince me to unlock the door. Then I heard car doors banging outside and Grandma's voice downstairs, followed by my uncle's deeper one. The front door must have been unlocked as there was yelling from the living room. Grandma sounded angrier than I had ever heard her, and my uncle threatened to call the cops if he wasn't allowed to see me. Mom dashed downstairs and the arguing grew more louder. I remained confined in the bathroom with Max, listening to them argue about the money, the dog, and whether I was lying. My uncle's voice became quite forceful, and he repeated the word police again. Everything went still for a moment, and then I heard footsteps approaching upstairs. Grandma whispered my name softly and told me it was safe to come out. I unlocked the door, and she grabbed me into a hug, Max still pushed against my knees. She ordered me to quickly pack my bag and she'd stand guard. I grabbed clothing and school supplies and stuffed them into my backpack while she blocked my doorway. Dad stood in the hallway, mumbling about ungrateful children and how we'd regret it. Mom only watched from their bedroom door, tears streaming down her cheeks, but they made no attempt to stop us. Grandma maintained her hand on my shoulder as we passed them and descended the stairs. My uncle waited at the front entrance and led us to Grandma's car. I slid into the back seat with Max on my lap, and as soon as the doors closed, I burst into tears like I hadn't in years. Grandma drove away from the house, talking on her phone to someone at her bank over the car speakers. She was asking about recent transactions and password changes, and her tone was worrisome. Max licked my face and cuddled himself on my lap, even though he could barely fit. Grandma continued looking at me in the mirror and said that everything will be well now. She said I'd stay with her and we'd figure things out together. When we arrived, her house felt calm and safe, but I couldn't rest. Max stayed right next to me on the guest bed that first night, taking up the majority of the area. I kept checking the family chat, where a full-fledged fight had begun. Some relatives believed my parents when they said it was simply occasional fun gambling and that I was exaggerating. Others were outraged by the theft and dog maltreatment. Grandma had written, asking everyone to give us some room so we could handle this properly. The next morning, Grandma woke me up early, saying we needed to get Max checked right away. At the emergency vet clinic, they performed x-rays and noted the bruises on his ribs. The vet stated we were fortunate that nothing was broken, but Max required surgery soon, and the estimate made my stomach drop. Everything costs $4,300, which includes today's emergency visit. Grandma held my hand and murmured, "We'll figure it out." I took images of the vet report and shared them on the family chat, displaying Max's injuries and the expense. Within minutes, Mom texted me privately from an unfamiliar phone, accusing me of destroying our family for a dog. My hands shook as I blocked the phone without answering. Monday at school, I couldn't keep my eyes open, so the counselor drew me aside during second period. She inquired whether everything was well at home, and something about her gentle voice compelled me to tell her everything. Her expression became more serious as I explained the stealing, Max, and my current living situation with Grandma. She stated that she was legally required to file a report with Child Protective Services. My gut hurt, but I knew why she had to do it. After school, Grandma accompanied me to the bank, where she discovered even more money missing than we had suspected. The bank lady showed us transactions dating back 6 months, totaling over $2,000. Grandma's face paled, and she demanded that all of her accounts be frozen and passwords changed right now. That same evening my phone began to buzz with texts from Dad, and I could see the preview, which showed long lines describing how they sacrificed everything for me and worked double shifts to provide me with a decent life. While Grandma was preparing dinner, the messages kept flooding in, each one longer and more detailed about how gambling was only for fun, and that they would repay everyone with their next big victory. I screenshotted every single text without opening it so he wouldn't see the red receipts, then placed them in a folder named Evidence that the counselor had instructed me to create. Max remained close to my leg as I sat at Grandma's kitchen table, watching the notifications build up. His tail was wagging slower than normal, as if he could feel the stress. My Discord finally alerted me to a message from Layla Kelly, who asked where I'd been for the past 3 nights because our clan was attempting to raid without me. My fingers shook slightly as I typed out everything that had happened, including my parents stealing Max's surgery money and kicking him, as well as how I was now living with Grandma. She reacted immediately, stating her parents were fine with my playing earlier in the evening since they understood my circumstances, and that having one normal thing in my life right now made my chest feel less tight. After supper, Grandma took out a calculator, and we sat down to calculate Max's surgical costs, which were $4,700 altogether. She shuffled money around in her budget, demonstrating that she could afford approximately $3,000, but I needed to contribute at least $2,500, which meant finding work quickly. I began scanning employment boards on my phone as she called a buddy who owned a pet business to see if they were hiring. And Max rested his head on my lap, as if he understood we were doing this for him. My parents sent me more angry SMS for 2 days before calling me from an unknown phone. When I responded, a woman identified herself as the CPS worker assigned to my case. She needed to plan an interview and a home visit. Her tone was professional, yet kind as she explained the procedure and what would happen next. Grandma held my hand when I answered the phone, squeezing it when my voice became wobbly and answering inquiries about where I was staying and how safe I felt. The next day, while doing my homework, I heard a beating on Grandma's front door. Mom was screaming and begging through the window, pleading with me to let her talk to me. Grandma approached the door but did not open it, informing Mom through the glass that she was not wanted and should leave immediately. Mom kept hammering on the door, shouting about her baby and how grandmother was poisoning me against her. So Grandma dialed 911 while I recorded everything on my phone from the hallway. Within 15 minutes the police arrived, and I observed from the living room window as they spoke with Mom, who was gesticulating violently and pointing toward the home. The cop kept shaking his head before telling her she had to go, or she would be arrested for trespassing. Watching my own mother being escorted to her car by police made my gut hurt, even though I knew she caused it herself. Meanwhile, the family group chat had devolved into an absolute war zone, with relatives taking sides and debating whether my parents were addicts or simply anxious parents trying to have fun. Grandma wrote a lengthy statement about limits and offered links to gambling addiction resources, emphasizing that indulging them was not helping anyone. Dad instantly responded, calling her a bitter old woman who was attempting to steal his son, prompting my aunt and 2 cousins to turn against him and post about how they had also spotted money gone. 3 days later, Grandma drove me to my parents' house while they were at work, so I could grab more of my belongings for my extended stay. Even though nothing had changed, the house felt foreign and frigid, as if it belonged to strangers rather than my childhood home. We moved quickly, taking my clothes from my dresser and closet, my school supplies from my desk, and most crucially, Max's meds from the bathroom cabinet. I also took my gaming headset and the birthday cards in my drawer that had cash that my parents hadn't discovered yet, and stuffed everything into rubbish bags while Grandma watched out the window. That night, as I was about to start playing with Riley and the clan, my phone abruptly went out of service and refused to connect. Grandma quickly called her carrier and discovered that my parents had discontinued my line without warning, most likely in an attempt to shut me off from everyone. She enrolled me to her plan straight away over the phone, and we spent the next hour moving my number over, which felt strange relying on someone for something so fundamental as phone service. But I had no other alternative. The next day at school, the counselor assisted me in organizing all of my evidence into a coherent timeline for CPS, printing screenshots of Dad's texts, as well as images of my empty piggy bank and Max's empty surgical jar. We created a dossier outlining the pattern of monitoring, including all of their images of my room and videos of them testing me, particularly the video of Dad kicking Max. Everything was set out in chronological sequence, making it hard to refute what had been going on for months. The counselor stated that this would really benefit my case. On my way home from school, I stopped to a pet store near Grandma's house, where her friend worked as the manager, and filled out a job application directly at the counter. The boss appreciated that I cared about animals and had experience with a sick dog, so he offered me weekend work starting that Saturday at minimum salary. It wasn't much money, but every penny would go towards Max's surgery, and having something practical to do would keep me from going insane worrying about everything else. 3 days later, the counselor called me out of arithmetic class and led me to her office, where a woman in a gray suit waited with a clipboard and a serious expression. She introduced herself as a CPS worker and asked me to tell her everything from the beginning, while the counselor sat next to me, nodding. I told her the entire tale about the fake sleeping, the stolen money, and the video of Dad kicking Max, which prompted her to write faster on her notepad. She inquired about the surveillance images, how long they had been watching me at night, and if I felt comfortable at Grandma's place. After an hour of questioning, she indicated the case would remain open while they investigated and handed me her card in case anything further happened. That same afternoon, my phone began to fill up with notifications from the family group chat, where my aunt had set up a GoFundMe link for Max's surgery. Some relatives donated $30 or $40, but my uncle stated that we were only condoning my rudeness and that I should return home. The disagreement became so hot that Grandma had to block the chat for a time, but we had already raised $400. Later that evening, I got into Discord and saw Riley had messaged me 13 times, asking whether I was okay. The entire clan was online. When I entered the voice chat, everyone remarked they were delighted I was safe and didn't mind that I could only play for 3 hours. We played 3 matches, and for 2 hours, I forgot about everything else and focused on the game like any other youngster. The next morning, Grandma took Max back to the vet for a checkup, and the vet stated the pain medicines were helping, but we needed to have the surgery done within 3 weeks. We booked it for exactly 15 days in advance, giving us enough time to gather the remaining funds. The countdown made everything seem more important, and I checked the GoFundMe every few hours. 2 days later, I was in English class when the office assistant came to grab me and told me that my parents were there to sign me out. When I arrived, the principal was already on the phone with Grandma, and I could hear her say no via the speaker. Security had to accompany my parents to the parking lot while Mom yelled that I was her kid and she had rights. Now there's a big red note in my file regarding the custody situation, and everyone in the office is aware of what's happening. That night, Grandma attended her first gammon meeting at the community center and returned with red eyes from crying. She said hearing other people's tales about family members with gambling problems helped her realize it wasn't her fault for not noticing it sooner. She brought home booklets on enabling and limits, which we studied on the couch while Max slept between us. Meanwhile, the bank was examining the unlawful transactions from Grandma's account and asked my parents to explain where the money went. Dad sent me a lengthy text accusing me for damaging their credit score and their lives, but I simply screenshotted it and saved it in my evidence folder. The following week I had my second session with the school counselor, during which we discussed feeling bad, despite the fact that my parents had stolen. She explained that consequences are not the same as punishment, and that my parents were simply dealing with the inevitable consequences of taking money that was not theirs. It helped a little, but I still felt horrible seeing them struggle after what they did to Max. I arrived at the pet store for my first shift on Saturday morning, wearing the blue polo shirt they had given me. The manager showed me how to use the register, scan items, count change, and clean the hamster and guinea pig cages. By lunch, my hands smelled like wood shavings and disinfectant, but I didn't bother because every dollar would aid Max. When I received my schedule for the next 3 weeks, I figured that if I worked an extra hour or two before Max's operation, I would earn roughly $200. Grandma's lawyer buddy arrived that evening with a stack of documents outlining custody and guardianship choices. She said that since I was 16, the judge has listened to my wishes and where I feel safe residing. We completed all of the papers for temporary guardianship, with Grandma as my guardian, and the lawyer agreed to submit it at the courtroom for free on Monday morning. Grandma received a call from Dad on Tuesday morning, informing her that he had begun attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings as ordered by CPS. She put him on speaker, and I could hear the phony sincerity in his voice as he spoke, accepting responsibility and making adjustments. Grandma rolled her eyes at me across the kitchen table. After he hung up, she stated that she would believe it if she saw actual change, rather than just showing up for attendance sheets. Mom had not yet enrolled in anything, according to the CPS official who contacted later that day. She was still arguing that she didn't have a problem, and that Dad was the one who did. The worker stated that the discrepancy in their reactions was causing problems between them, which was unsurprising. That same afternoon, 3 of my aunts messaged me after seeing the photo I uploaded of Max, looking forlorn with his cone from the vet visit. They each gave money through Venmo, leaving remarks like, "For sweet Max," and "Get that baby his surgery." With my first paycheck from the pet business and what Grandma had saved, we finally had enough for the entire $3,500. I sat on the floor next to Max and gently embraced him around his aching ribs, telling him we were going to fix him. On Wednesday, a CPS worker came to examine Grandma's house to ensure that I was in a safe setting. She looked around my room, inquired about school, and made sure I had clean clothes and adequate food. Max followed us around, slowly wagging his tail, which appeared to fascinate her. She indicated that if my parents finished their counseling sessions, I could be permitted to have supervised visits with them. I nodded, but my gut tightened at the prospect. On Thursday afternoon, a police officer met me at my parents' house to collect more of my belongings for my long-term stay at Grandma's. Mom waited in the doorway, watching as I gathered my winter clothes, Xbox and schoolwork. Her cheeks was puffy from sobbing, and when I passed by with my last package, she muttered, "I apologize." The police stood between us, and while I wanted to believe her, all I could think about was Max's operation fund slipping into her pocketbook. The night before Max's operation, I pushed my meal around my plate, unwilling to eat the chicken Grandma had made. Riley continued texting me amusing TikToks and memes about dogs and cones to keep me entertained, but my hands were too shaky to type correctly. Grandma observed and told Max he could sleep on my bed tonight, even though she usually made him sleep on his dog bed on the floor. He cuddled up next to me, and I lay awake for the majority of the night, my palm on his side, feeling him breathe. On Saturday morning, we dropped Max off at the vet clinic at 7 a.m. for his surgery. The veterinarian estimated that it would take around 4 hours and that they would call when he was recovered. Grandma and I sat in the waiting area, sipping horrible coffee from their machine and browsing through old magazines without reading them. Other people arrived and left, picking up their healthy pets while we waited. Finally, at midday, the vet emerged, still dressed in her scrubs, and reported that everything went fine. The growth was removed, and Max would require extensive rest, but he should recover completely. I started crying right there in the waiting room, and Grandma drew me into an embrace that smelled like her lavender perfume. Sunday morning, I shared a photo of Max at the vet with his operation cone and bandages on the family group chat. Even my uncle, who initially defended my parents, responded with heart emoticons. Mom texted from a new number I didn't recognize, saying she was relieved he was fine. I glanced at her message for a long time before saving the number without responding. Max returned home 2 days after surgery and required medication every 4 hours, as well as assistance with using the restroom. The school granted my absence request so that I could care for him. He was so feeble he could hardly stand, but when he saw me, his tail wagged so softly that it made everything worthwhile. I slept on the floor next to his bed and set alarms all night for his pain medicine. The pet store manager altered the schedule without asking, allowing me to work shorter shifts and leave if Max required it. My coworkers had gathered a box of goods, including soft blankets and special recovery food for dogs. Since Max couldn't have actual baths yet, one grooming employee gave me a bottle of dry shampoo for dogs. Their goodwill caught me off guard, and I had to hurry to the restroom so they wouldn't see me cry. 2 weeks later, CPS planned a supervised visit for my parents at their downtown office. Walking into the beige room with fluorescent lights and plastic seats felt like entering a different world. Dad appeared older, with heavy circles under his eyes, while Mom could not stop fussing with her purse strap. We sat around a round table, with the CPS worker taking notes as we discussed safe topics such as my grades and the weather. No one mentioned Max, the money, or the gaming. When the hour was done, we all stood awkwardly, and Mom extended toward me before pulling her hand back. Dad just nodded, and they left first, leaving me behind to talk to the worker about how things went. The worker asked if I felt safe returning to Grandma's, and I agreed while signing some paperwork for her report. Outside in the parking lot, Grandma was waiting in her car, and I climbed in, feeling as if someone had taken all of my vitality. We drove home in quiet, and when we arrived, Max walked over to me and pressed against my legs before accompanying me to the couch, where I fell. He crawled up next to me, despite the fact that his operation site was still uncomfortable, and placed his head on my lap while I watched TV without paying attention. The school counselor noticed I was quieter than usual the next day, and pulled me aside after our session to tell me that healing was a process. She showed me a graph with ups and downs instead of a smooth rising trajectory, and said that most children felt worse after their first sessions before things improved. Max must have realized something was wrong because he spent the entire evening within 3 feet of me, even accompanying me to the bathroom and waiting outside the door. 2 weeks later, Grandma took me to a community center where her gammon club was hosting a special family day complete with snacks and folding chairs placed in a large circle. I didn't want to go, but she thought it could be helpful to meet other people going through similar experiences. The room had around 30 individuals, including 5 or 6 children my age, seated together in one corner, looking just as uncomfortable as I was. The group leader asked if anyone wanted to contribute, and after 3 people discussed their stories, I raised my hand without intending to. I told them about the surveillance games, the stolen money, Max's surgery, and how strange it was to see my parents in that supervised visit. When I finished, one of the other adolescents came over during the break and mentioned that his father had done similar things with his college fund. We ended up sharing phone numbers with other kids our age, and that night, someone formed a group chat dubbed GA Kids, where we could vent without adults looking. 3 weeks after Max's surgery, I put his leash on for the first time, and we went slowly to the end of Grandma's driveway. His legs were wobbly, and he kept pausing to sniff everything, yet his tail wiggled the entire while. We made it halfway down the block before he began panting heavily, and I carried him back despite his weight of about 40 pounds. Each day we went a little further until we had done a full loop around the block, with him walking the entire time. At his follow-up appointment, the veterinarian examined him and reported that the bone was healing perfectly, and his muscles were becoming stronger by the day. Meanwhile, my parents were attending their necessary counseling sessions twice a week, according to the CPS official who called with updates. After 2 months of sessions, they submitted documents requesting more visitation, and the judge granted 1 unsupervised visit per week at a public setting. The first meeting was at a downtown coffee shop, where they were already sitting at a corner table when Grandma dropped me off. When I stepped in, Dad stood up but appeared hesitant whether to hug me, so we performed this awkward half-wave instead. Mom had purchased my favorite drink, which was sitting at my seat and becoming cold because I was 5 minutes late from nearly backing out in the parking lot. We discussed safe topics such as a TV show we used to watch and how the coffee shop had changed since last year. Nobody addressed gambling, Max, or money until the very end, when Mom indicated they were working so hard to change. I nodded and said I had to leave since Grandma was waiting, and I walked out, unsure whether I wanted them to change, or to stay angry indefinitely. School was different living at Grandma's house without the exhaustion of pretending to sleep every night. My chemistry teacher approached me after class to say she had observed my test results improving and asked if I had obtained a tutor. I simply stated that things were more steady at home, and she smiled as if she understood without further explanation. My English essays received higher grades, and arithmetic began to make more sense once I could focus, instead of worried about that night's surveillance games. The report card that arrived 3 months later had all B's and 2 A's, the greatest grades I'd received since middle school. Grandma attached it on the refrigerator with a cat-shaped magnet and took a picture to give to my aunt. 6 weeks after filing the fraud report, the bank called Grandma to inform her that their investigation was complete and that they had recovered the majority of the stolen funds. My parents had to sign an agreement to repay the remainder in monthly payments, which would take nearly 3 years to complete. The bank gave Grandma a $1,800 check, which she placed in a new account at a different bank across town. Dad texted me that night, saying the reparation payments would ruin their credit. but he was confident they earned it. 3 months into my job at the pet store, the manager called me into her office, and I assumed I was in trouble for something. Instead, she said that she was elevating me to shift supervisor with a $150 boost per hour. The added responsibilities included counting the register and teaching new employees, but I enjoyed having something to focus on other than family strife. When my first Employee of the Month certificate arrived, Grandma purchased a frame from the dollar shop and displayed it in the hallway next to my report card. By the 4th month following surgery, Max had fully recovered and was racing around Grandma's backyard, chasing squirrels he had little hope of capturing. His limp had gone, and he could climb onto my bed without assistance, something that appeared impossible when he could hardly walk. Watching him play tug-of-war with a rope toy or gallop across the grass made every difficult decision worthwhile. He still slept next to my bed every night, occasionally resting his paw on the mattress to ensure I was still there. One afternoon, I returned home from school to find a note addressed to me in Mom's handwriting on the kitchen counter. Inside were 2 pages of her apologizing without making excuses or blaming others for her actions. She wrote about beginning her own therapy outside of the court-mandated sessions and learning about addiction tendencies from her childhood. She said she understood if I never forgave her, but she wanted me to know she apologized for stealing from me and Max, as well as for all of the monitoring and lying. I read it 3 times before carefully folding it and storing it in my desk drawer, not ready to react but also not wanting to throw it away. When someone recommended that we meet in the mall on Saturday, the GA Kids group chat became a real hangout. 4 of us showed up and went around, eating pretzels and mocking pricey clothing. Nobody discussed parenting, gambling, or treatment. We began meeting every weekend to see movies or eat. Sometimes I just sit in someone's car, listening to music and grumbling about homework. Having pals who understood without explanations made things feel less heavy and strange. Spring came and went, and the family group chat shifted to photographs of gardens and birthday reminders rather than angry messages about stolen money. Some cousins continued to refuse to speak with my parents, but the majority had gone on to their own troubles. Dad continued to attend his GA meetings every Tuesday and Thursday night, and he began collecting the plastic chips that are given out for being clean. When he received his 6-month chip, he texted me a picture and invited me to the event when it was presented. I arrived at the community center and saw him stand in front of 30 other gambling addicts, relating his story of losing his family to scratch-offs and sports betting. His voice trembled as he remembered kicking Max and stealing from his mother and son. After the meeting, he approached with the blue chip and said, "Thanks for coming." My parents signed the consent documents without contesting it, thus the court date for Grandma's guardianship came up sooner than intended. We waited in the little courtroom for about 20 minutes, while the judge answered basic questions regarding my living condition and school attendance. My parents sat 2 rows back, looking at their phones, as the judge stamped the documents to make it official. Walking out with the legal documents in Grandma's handbag felt like a breath of fresh air after months. The animal sanctuary near Grandma's house wanted weekend volunteers, so I applied, citing my pet store experience. Max came with me after I certified him as a therapy animal through an internet program that only required a $100 charge. The fearful canines at the shelter relaxed as Max sat near their cages, wagging his tail and allowing them to sniff through the bars. One pit bull mix who hissed at everyone allowed Max to lick his face over the fence and even began eating again after 3 days of refusing food. Every first Saturday of the month, my parents came to Grandma's house for dinner, with stringent restrictions on what we could talk about. Mom brought dessert from the grocery store bakery, and Dad cleaned the dishes after we ate. We discussed the weather, TV shows, and Max's latest tricks, but never about money, the past, or anything important. The dinners became less awkward after the 3rd, when Dad stated that he had been promoted to assistant manager at his warehouse job. Riley messaged me about a gaming convention coming to the city 2 hours away, and her parents volunteered to take us both if we split the petrol money. Meeting her in person after talking online for 2 years was strange for about 5 minutes until she made the same joke about our poor teammates that she always did on Discord. We spent the entire day playing new games, eating costly pizza, and watching cosplayers pose for photos. She purchased me a Max keychain from a merchant who sells bespoke pet items, and I gave her a poster signed by her favorite streamer. Having someone who knew the entire story but still treated me normally made the convention the nicest day I'd ever had. My guidance counselor assisted me in applying to institutions, one of which had a good veterinary program, and gave partial scholarships to those with verified difficulty. The acceptance letter arrived in April, along with enough financial aid to make it work through loans and Grandma's assistance. She cried while reading it at the kitchen table and even posted about it in the family group chat, where both my parents sent congratulations messages with heart emojis. Obtaining approval for Max as an emotional support animal in the dorms required 3 applications and a note from my therapist, but the housing office stamped it okay. Junior year concluded with me packing boxes for college and Max following me around the home, as if he sensed something was changing. My parents attended graduation and sat with Grandma, snapping photos like a regular family, even though we hadn't been normal in over a year. Life settled into a good routine, with Max healthy and trotting around the dog park every morning before my shift at the pet store. College started in 3 months, and I had saved enough money for books and supplies thanks to my supervisor's pay raises. My parents continued to attend meetings and therapy, and Max slept next to my bed every night, his paw touching the mattress to ensure I was still present. My sister slapped me in a high-end store when I was buying diamonds for myself, until a stranger stepped in, seeking revenge for me. It was a Tuesday like any other, or so I thought. I walked into Bellamy's, a jewelry store so extravagant it could make anyone feel out of place. But today, I was different. Today, I was finally going to treat myself to something I had worked years to afford, a pair of diamond earrings. I'd saved, sacrificed, and fought for this moment. But just as I was about to make the purchase, the doors chimed, and my sister stepped in, her face twisted in rage. And then before I even realized what was happening, her hand slapped across my face, echoing through the store. What happened next would change everything. Let me tell you the whole story. I'm Katie. And last Tuesday I was standing in Bellamy's, a jewelry store so opulent that it had its own postcode. I was there with a warm heart, admiring a set of diamond earrings that I had saved up for months. After years of barely getting by, I finally had reason to celebrate. But just as I was ready to make the purchase, the doors chimed, and my sister Lily came in, her face a mask of rage. Before I could blink, her palm touched my cheek. The sound rang through the hushed store, piercing and terrible. So what happened next? That changed everything. Growing up with Lily was like living in the path of a Category 6 hurricane. She was 3 years older, always appeared prettier, and was unquestionably the center of the universe. While I was working after-school jobs since I was 17, trying to make ends meet, Lily jumped from interest to friend group, completely confident that our parents would cover it, which they always did. Our childhood home was not a mansion, but we had everything we needed. My father was a high school teacher. My mother managed a tiny store. They pulled together enough money to provide Lily with whatever she desired, including dance lessons, cheerleading camps, and new clothes for each season. Me? I saved my babysitting money to buy art supplies and graphic design software. Katie, be reasonable, Mom would reply when I dared to bring out the obvious favoritism. Your sister needs more support, you've always been so independent. Being independent was not an option for me, it was about survival. By 21, I was working full-time at a print shop and attending night classes for my graphic design degree. Meanwhile, Lily stayed at home until she was 24, when our parents eventually gave her an apartment as a graduation present after her 3rd effort at community college. Last month, however, something changed for me. It was my 5th anniversary with Stonebrook Designs. I'd worked my tail off to advance from junior designer to managing significant clients. My boss, Rachel, had just awarded me a significant increase for landing this massive new campaign. For the first time, I had breathing room. There is real breathing room. And I decided, you know what? I'm getting myself something I've always desired but never allowed myself to have. Real diamond earrings. The Sunday before the jewelry store incident, we had our customary family dinner at my parents' home. I was so anxious to share my promotion news, but Lily automatically took over the conversation. Everyone, I have an announcement, she'd exclaim, showing a big diamond ring. Ethan proposed. We're getting married next spring. Ethan, her 6-month boyfriend, only grinned uncomfortably alongside her. His main draw, as far as I could tell, was his luxury automobile and commercial real estate career. Oh sweetheart, that's wonderful, Mom exclaimed, running to hug her. Dad patted Ethan on the back, as if he had won the lottery. When I eventually mentioned my promotion, Mom simply nodded distractedly. That's nice, honey. Now Lily, tell us how he proposed. That night, something within me hardened. The earrings were no longer an indulgence, they were a statement, a rebellious, bright reminder that my accomplishments were important, even if only to myself. Bellamsey was not the most expensive jewelry store in Phoenix, but it was undoubtedly the most scary. Crystal chandeliers glistened overhead, throwing rainbows on glass display cases. The workers wore fitted clothes, and security cameras monitored every action. I'd strolled past it numerous times but never dared to enter. That Tuesday morning I took a half day off work. I put on my nicest navy dress, groomed my hair, used modest makeup, and even wore heels, which is unusual for someone who lives in sneakers and jeans. I wanted to seem like I belonged there. Pushing open the thick glass door, I was greeted with the delicate notes of classical music and the subtle aroma of costly perfume. A tall, attractive woman with silver-streaked hair approached me with a friendly grin. "Welcome to Belamsi. How may I assist you today?" My mouth dried up. "I'm looking for diamond earrings," I said, my voice somewhat unsteady. "Something small but of good quality. It's my first real purchase." Instead of the condescending look I expected, Tara's eyes shone brightly. "Your first diamonds. That's a special milestone. Let's find something perfect for you." She brought me to a display describing cut grades and clarity as she showed me many pairs. I was just beginning to unwind when the door chimed again, announcing another customer. I wouldn't have turned around if not for the voice. It sliced through the elegant environment like a jagged knife. "Oh my God, Katie, what are you doing here?" Lily stood in the doorway, flanked by Bridget and Kayla, two of her college classmates. She was dressed in skin-tight white trousers, a pink silk top, and heels that made her 3 inches taller than me. Her recently highlighted blonde hair cascaded in beautiful waves down her shoulders. "Are you lost?" she said, her voice echoing. "Isn't this place out of your league?" Tara's brow furrowed slightly, but her professional composure remained unwavering. "Your sister is looking at our diamond collection. Would you care to join us?" Lily laughed as she strode toward us, her buddies trailing behind. "Yes, unfortunately we shared DNA, though you'd never guess by looking at us." The suggested comparison weighed heavy in the air. Lily had always been the picture of beauty, with her golden hair and blue eyes. I resembled her father's side, darker looks, more athletic. "I didn't know you were going shopping today," I answered, attempting to maintain my voice. "Are you looking for wedding bands?" "Just browsing," Lily said, glancing into the case. "Ethan and I will probably go to Cartier in Scottsdale. What are you buying?" "Costume jewelry." Tara cleared her throat. "Actually, your sister has excellent taste. She's considering these half-carat diamond studs." Lily's brows sharpened as she inspected Tara's earrings. "Half-carat with your salary? That seems excessive." "I got a promotion," I answered, feeling heat surge up my cheeks. "I can afford them." "A promotion at that little print shop, impressive," Lily said sarcastically. "What does that mean? An extra $1 per hour?" Bridget snickered. Kayla pretended to check a bracelet. I spotted an older couple across the store watching us with disapproving looks. "It's a graphic design agency, not a print shop," I said, knowing Lily wouldn't notice the difference. "And the raise is substantial." "Well, good for you," Lily said, taking up another pair of earrings. "Though if you had any financial sense, you'd invest that money instead of blowing it on jewelry. But that's always been your problem, hasn't it?" Poor decision-making. 5 years of therapy had taught me not to fall for Lily's bait, but her words still stung. Tara, noticing the tension, softly attempted to redirect. "These would look great with your complexion," she added, placing the earrings up to my ear. "The princess cut catches light magnificently." "They're perfect," I said, deliberately ignoring Lily. "I'll take them." "Seriously?" Lily moved closer, her cloying aroma overwhelming. "You're going to spend thousands on earrings just after I announced my engagement? This is very typical of you." The accusation surprised me. What does buying earrings have to do with your engagement? "You can't stand the fact that I'm the center of attention for once." "You've always been jealous of me," Lily said, drawing a security guard's attention to us. For once I laughed incredulously. "You have always been the focus of attention. I've lived my life in your shadow." "Ladies," Tara interrupted, "perhaps we could—" Lily cut her off. "In my shadow? That is an impressive sum. Mom and Dad brag about you because of your scholarship and professional accomplishments. Poor Lily can't compete with the flawless Katie." The utter distortion of reality surprised me for a moment. Had we grown up in the same house? Had she not noticed how many times our parents had emphasized her needs, wants, and dramas? "That's not true. And you know it," I remarked quietly, acutely aware of the crowd we'd gathered. 2 additional sales assistants froze, and an exquisite woman examining necklaces took a step back from her display. "Do you know what? I don't have to hear this." I glanced to Tara. "I'd like to purchase the earrings now." "Don't you dare leave me." Lily grasped my arm, her manicured nails piercing into my skin. I drew away. Do not cause a scene, Lily. This is embarrassing. Am I embarrassing? You're the one who buys expensive jewelry to make my engagement stand out. Not everything is about you, I responded, losing patience. It has nothing to do with your engagement. I earned this money. I've saved for months, and I'm finally treating myself. Tara slipped the earrings into a velvet box and approached the cashier, apparently intending to speed up the transaction. Lily followed, her cheeks flaming. How much are those earrings anyway? Tara hesitated, turning to me for approval. I nodded. $2,800, she said calmly. Lily's jaw dropped. $3,000? Are you insane? That is how much Mom and Dad paid for my entire semester of college. I worked during school, I reminded her. This is my money. It is a waste. A total waste, Lily's voice resonated throughout the store. You're just trying to prove something because you're jealous of my ring, my fiancé, my life. I'm not jealous of you, Lily, I responded, the plain truth ringing. I never have been. The truth seemed to awaken something within her. Her face distorted with wrath, and before I could respond, her palm shot through the air and hit my cheek. The sound cracked like a whip in the silence of the store. My cheeks flushed with pain, and tears welled up in my eyes. The store became utterly silent. The classical music suddenly became muffled, as if someone had turned down the volume on reality itself. My palm moved to my stinging cheek as I peered at my sister in bewilderment. In 27 years, despite our conflicts and disagreements, she had never hit me. Not once. Tara's mouth formed the perfect O of shock. Bridget and Kayla had stopped in their tracks, their gaze drawn to the floor tiles. The security guy straightened and moved toward us, and then a deep authoritative voice pierced the silence behind me. Touch my wife again and see what happens. The voice belonged to a tall man in his late 30s, dressed immaculately in a charcoal suit that screamed custom tailoring. His dark hair was well styled, and his jawline looked like it was cut from marble. But what struck me the most were his eyes, which were steel gray and unwaveringly focused on Lily. Excuse me, Lily faltered, her confidence wavering. The man took a step forward, slightly in front of me, and said, You heard me. If you raise your hand to my wife again, you will be sorry. Confusion spread throughout the store. Tara glanced at us with wide eyes. Even the security guard hesitated. Your wife? Lily repeated, her eyes flitting between the stranger and me. I was equally confused, too stunned to speak. Wife. I hadn't seen this man before. Yes, my wife. The man repeated, his voice controlled but firm as granite. And I don't appreciate witnessing her being assaulted in public. Lily's face flashed with terror as she noticed the man's fine watch, the quality of his clothes, and his imposing presence. For once she appeared at a loss for words. The man turned slightly toward me, and I noticed a spark of surprise in his eyes as he saw my face more fully. His confident expression trembled briefly before he recovered. Sophia, are you okay? He inquired, his tone softening noticeably. I'm not, I said, but he had already returned to Lily. I'm not sure who you are or what your problem is, but this behavior is totally unacceptable. I recommend that you leave before I have security escort you out. Lily's amazement had given way to wrath. Are you even aware who I am? This is my sister, not your wife. Her name is Katie. The man blinked and returned his attention to me. As the idea dawned on him, a small flush rose up his neck. I apologize for the confusion, he continued, his composure briefly slipping. But my point remains. Your behavior is unacceptable. I've finally discovered my voice. Who are you? Oliver Grant, he said, holding out his hand. I truly apologize for any misunderstanding. From behind, you resemble my wife, Sophia. The name was registered instantaneously. Oliver Grant founded Innovate Tech, a software company that revolutionized digital security. His net worth was estimated at several $billion. His visage appears on occasion in business journals. You're Oliver Grant. Lily's tone transformed abruptly, from wrath to nauseating sweetness. Wow, what an honor. I'm a huge fan of your work. Oliver did not even look at her. Are you okay? He asked me again. That looked painful. I nodded, my cheeks still hurting. I am fine. Just an error in identity. The mistake was mine, but my concern is genuine, Oliver stated. Family disagreements shouldn't escalate to physical violence. It wasn't a disagreement, Lily clarified, urgently attempting to salvage the situation. Sisters, we were simply joking around. Katie understands I didn't intend anything by it. The audacity of the falsehood made my fury boil. That's not true, I said, my voice clear and calm. You slapped me because I wouldn't let you make me feel small about buying something nice for myself. That's absurd, Lily exclaimed, looking at Oliver with a plea. Katie always exaggerates. She's furious because I recently got engaged and she's still single. Oliver's expression remained neutral. I observed the entire discussion. You were undermining her accomplishments and attempting to make her feel guilty about spending her own money. When it didn't work, you turned to physical aggression. The security guard had finally arrived, accompanied by a distinguished older man dressed in a pinstriped suit. Mr. Grant, the older man remarked, his tone deferential. Mr. Bellamy, is there a problem? Oliver responded with a nod of greeting. This woman, he motioned toward Lily, just assaulted another customer. So this was Bellamy from Bellamy's Jewelry. The owner had arrived to investigate. I did not do such a thing, Lily insisted. It is all a misunderstanding. Tell them, Katie. All eyes turned to me. For a minute I felt the old temptation to smooth things up, to downplay the incident for the sake of family harmony. It was something I had always done. But something inside me changed when Lily's palm touched my face. She slapped me, I said firmly, the words solid, because I decided to buy these earrings instead of listening to her criticize me. Mr. Bellamy's expression darkened. We have a zero-tolerance policy for violent behavior at our establishment. I'm afraid I have to ask you to go immediately. You can't be serious, Lily exclaimed. Do you know who our father is? I don't believe that's relevant, Mr. Bellamy said coolly. Frank, please escort this lady and her companions to the exit. The security guard stepped forwards. This way, please. Katie, you can't let them do this, Lily said again. Tell them we were just having a sisterly spat. I said nothing, watching Frank softly but forcefully bring Lily to the door. Bridget and Kayla followed, their faces appalled. At the door, Lily turned around. You'll regret it, Katie. Wait till Mom and Dad find out how you embarrassed me in public. Following their departure, the store remained uncomfortably silent. Oliver Grant turned to me with genuine sadness on his face. I apologize for complicating the situation. Please let me make it up to you. Perhaps coffee when you've finished your transaction. I would like to explain adequately. I hesitated, unsure what to make of this strange change of events, but something in his genuine gaze compelled me to nod. Okay, coffee would be nice. Mr. Bellamy personally completed my transaction while profusely apologized for the terrible circumstance. I signed the credit card slip with trembling hands, still absorbing the maelstrom of events. As Tara handed me the characteristic blue bag containing my earrings, Oliver Grant calmly waited by the door. I joined him, perplexed as to how a millionaire computer entrepreneur had found himself involved in my family issue. Oliver recommended a tiny cafe around the corner, away from the busy main street. It was an attractive venue with private booths and mellow jazz playing, the type of establishment I'd ordinarily pass by, figuring it was beyond of my price range. I come here when I need to think, Oliver remarked as a server showed us to a corner table. The espresso is excellent, and they respect privacy. When we were seated with coffee, an Americano for him and a latte for me, Oliver leaned forward, sincerely apologizing. I need to describe what happened back there. My wife Claire is in London on business, and I was at Bellamy's looking for an anniversary present. When I saw you from behind, I saw your height, hair color and style, and even the blue clothing reminded me of her. When that woman slapped you, I reacted instinctively. It's okay, I answered, still processing the strange sequence of events. Your action likely kept things from getting worse. Lily does not handle public correction well. Oliver's expression darkened slightly. Family can be complicated. I shouldn't presume to understand your relationship with your sister. No, you read the situation correctly, I said, curling my hands around the steaming mug. Lily has always been our favorite child. She isn't used to my standing up for myself. Family dynamics. Oliver nodded. I am familiar with the notion. My younger brother and I shared a similar bond for many years. Something about his tone piqued my curiosity. Has it improved? Oliver sipped his coffee. Yes, eventually. It required space, time, and some unpleasant conversations. Tyler loathed being in my shadow once Innovate Tech took off. He felt like he was constantly being compared to me. That sounds familiar, I replied. But in my case, I was constantly in Lily's shadow. The basic issue remains the same. Oliver said, comparison steals joy. When Tyler and I recognized the schism between us and began communicating openly, things improved. He now runs our European operations entirely on his own merit. The conversation flowed very well. Oliver Grant may have been a billionaire, but he spoke without pretense, listening intently as I detailed my relationship with Lily and my parents. So these earrings, he motioned to Bellamy's bag beside me, they represent more than just jewelry to you. They're proof that my work has value, I said. That I have value independent of my family's approval. Oliver nodded attentively. I absolutely get it. When I was 19, I sold my first program and used the proceeds to buy a stupidly costly watch. Not because I needed it, but because it symbolized validation. Exactly, I said, shocked at how accurately he had described the emotion. Our coffee cups were empty when Oliver looked at his phone and scowled slightly. I have a meeting in 30 minutes, but I've enjoyed our conversation. He hesitated before asking, what exactly do you do in graphic design? I am the lead designer of Stonebrook Designs. We manage the branding and marketing for several national accounts. I specialize in digital media integration. Oliver's eyes shone with eagerness. Digital media integration. We are now seeking for someone with that skills at Innovate Tech. Our marketing team requires fresh perspectives on our new consumer security app. Really? I could not disguise my surprise. Would you like to send your portfolio? There's no pressure, simply an opportunity to explore. My heart pounded at the possibility. Innovate Tech was noted for its innovative work atmosphere and generous remuneration packages. Even an interview would provide significant experience. I'd love to, I said, attempting to sound professional rather than enthusiastic. Oliver smiled and took out a business card. Email me directly. I'll make sure it gets to our creative director. As we stood to leave, Oliver halted. One more thing, don't let your sister's reaction diminish your achievement today. Those earrings represent your hard work. Wear them with pride. I nodded, moved by his empathy. Thank you for everything. Walking back to my car, I felt unusually light, despite the morning's events. The experience with Lily had been traumatic, but Oliver's unexpected mentorship had changed my outlook. For possibly the first time, I stood firm without apologizing for taking up space. My phone buzzed with incoming texts, 3 from my mother, 2 from my father, and 7 from Lily. I muted it without reading them. Whatever family storm was developing could wait until I was ready to confront it. By the time I got home that evening, my phone had 23 text messages and 9 missed calls. I scrolled through them while kicking off my shoes and collapsing on my couch. Lily's texts ranged from angry, "How dare you embarrass me like that?" to manipulative, "Mom is really upset with you," to faking conciliation, "I forgive you for overreacting." My parents' messages were typically one-sided, demanding that I call immediately to explain why I had caused a commotion and humiliated my sister. No one mentioned the slap. I laid the phone aside and took out the velvet box that held my new earrings. Under the warm lamplight, the diamonds caught fire and scattered little rainbows across my living room wall. They were stunning, but most importantly, they were mine. Earned with my own labor, chosen for my own preferences, and purchased with my own money. Instead of calling my family, I spent the evening working on my digital portfolio. If Oliver Grant's offer was true, I wanted to be ready. The response arrived the next morning when I was at work, almost making me drop my coffee mug. Katie, thank you for sending your impressive portfolio. Our creative director, Julia Thomas, would like to meet with you this Friday at 2 p.m. Please let me know if this works with your schedule. Regards, Oliver Grant. It was not just a polite introduction, he was actually setting up an interview. I instantly confirmed the time and spent the rest of the morning in a state of amazement and delight. That evening, I finally forced myself to call my folks. As expected, my mother responded with immediate displeasure. Katie Marie Hayes, what on earth happened yesterday? Lily is absolutely devastated. I took a deep breath. Mom, did Lily tell you she slapped me across the face in a public store? A pause. She said there was a misunderstanding that you were making a scene about her engagement. That's not what happened, I stated firmly. I was buying earrings with money from my recent promotion, which, by the way, no one congratulated me on at Sunday dinner. Lily showed up, criticized me, and when I wouldn't back down, she slapped me hard enough to leave a mark. Well, I'm sure she didn't mean it. She didn't mean it, I interjected. A stranger had to intervene because it was so inappropriate. The store owner asked her to leave. A stranger? Lily asked, referring to a man who became involved in a family company where he did not belong. I nearly laughed. That some man was Oliver Grant, the billionaire who founded Innovate Tech and noticed abusive behavior when it occurred. My mother fell silent while contemplating this information. Finally, she added, "Your sister is still very upset." I'm sure she is. Being held accountable is upsetting when you're not used to it. Katie, that's a terrible thing to say about your sister. Is it, Mom? When was the last time Lily faced consequences for her actions? When was the last time you or Dad didn't take her side? Another pause. We don't take sides. This time I laughed. Mom, you've been taking sides our entire lives. I'm just finally acknowledging it. I don't know what's gotten into you, my mother said, her voice tense. This isn't like you at all. Maybe that's the problem, I answered gently. Maybe it's exactly what should have been like me all along. My mother expressed dissatisfaction with my attitude and suggested that I call Lily to apologize. I vowed to think about it, knowing I had no intention of making the call. Friday approached with a sense of expectation and nervousness. I dressed professionally, wearing my new earrings for confidence, and arrived at the elegant Innovate Tech headquarters 15 minutes early. The building was a modern architectural marvel, made entirely of glass and sustainable materials, with a stunning living wall of tropical plants in the foyer. The receptionist sent me to the 14th floor, where I was greeted by a pleasant assistant named Jordan. Miss Thomas is running a few minutes late, Jordan stated, leading me to a nice waiting room. Can I get you water or coffee? Water would be great, thank you. Jordan moved away, and a familiar voice called my name. Oliver Grant approached with a friendly smile, dressed more casually than at our initial meeting, dark slacks and a navy button-down. Katie, glad you could make it. How are you? Good, thank you. A little nervous, I confessed. No need to be. Julia was impressed with your portfolio, particularly the Sunrise Healthcare campaign. She's eager to meet you. We talked briefly about the company until a gorgeous woman with copper-colored hair and bright green glasses approached. You must be Katie, she stated, offering her hand. I'm Julia Thomas. Sorry for the delay. Creative emergencies, you know how it is. Absolutely, I smiled, instantly like her forthright demeanor. Oliver, are you sitting in? Julia inquired. If that's all right with both of you, he said. I have a personal interest in this particular hire. Julia raised an eyebrow but nodded. Let's use the Aspen conference room. I've never had an interview like this before. Rather of asking traditional questions about strengths and shortcomings, Julia led me through a deep discussion about design philosophy and creative problem solutions. She showed me current Innovate Tech marketing materials and asked for my honest feedback, nodding appreciatively to my recommendations. Oliver largely observed, but occasionally asked important questions regarding my collaboration process and flexibility. His presence was encouraging, rather than threatening, and I found myself speaking with surprising confidence about my vision and ability. One last question, Julia asked, staring at Oliver before continuing. Our team works closely with developers who can be, let's say, particular about their creations. How do you handle strong personalities and creative conflicts? I reflected on the several times I'd handled Lily's demands and my parents' expectations, finding diplomatic solutions while maintaining my own boundaries. I believe in finding the common goal beneath the conflict, I told him. Most creative disagreements stem from everyone wanting the best outcome but seeing different paths to get there. I try to honor each perspective while keeping the ultimate purpose in focus. Julia nodded, appearing satisfied. Well, Katie, this has been illuminating. We have a few more candidates to interview, but you'll hear from us by next Wednesday. As Julia was gathering her notes, Oliver inquired, Do you have time for a quick tour before you leave? I'd love that, I said, shocked at the offer. Oliver guided me through the creative office, introducing me to several team members along the way. The workplace was both collaborative and focused, with smart amenities such as quiet pods, standing workstations, and a beautiful rooftop garden where staff could work outside in nice weather. What do you think? Oliver inquired as we stood on the rooftop, overlooking the city. It's incredible, I replied. Honestly, everything seems designed to support both creativity and well-being. That's exactly the balance we strive for, he said with a wink. When people feel valued, they produce their best work. As we returned to the lobby, Oliver hesitated. I hope you don't find this intrusive, but I wanted to ask, how are things with your family after Tuesday's incident? I exhaled. Complicated. They expect me to apologize to Lily. They don't see her behavior as the problem. Oliver's expression was thoughtful. Family patterns are persistent. It took years for my brother and me to break ours. He took a breath and then, whatever happens with this position, Katie, don't lose the confidence you showed at Bellamy's. That kind of self-advocacy is valuable everywhere, not just in jewelry stores. Thank you, I said, moved by his continuous mentorship. That means a lot. As I drove home, I mused on the bizarre turn of events that had brought me here. A traumatic public confrontation has opened doors I never believed possible. Whether or not I got the job, something fundamental had changed in how I perceived myself and my talents. My phone rang as I drove into my apartment complex. It was Lily. After a moment of doubt, I responded. Hello, Katie. Her tone was strained. We need to talk about what happened. I took a deep breath. Yes, we do. But not if the conversation begins with you expecting me to apologize. Excuse me? Her tone became sharper. You embarrassed me in front of my friends. No, Lily. You embarrassed yourself by slapping me in public. That's assault, by the way. Don't be so dramatic. It was barely a tap. It was hard enough to leave a mark, I argued. And you did it because I wouldn't let you make me feel bad about buying something nice for myself. This isn't about the stupid earrings, she exclaimed. It's about you trying to steal attention from my engagement. The familiar allegation may have previously made me defensive. Now it sounded pathetic. Lily, buying earrings has nothing to do with your engagement. Not everything is about you. You've changed, she accused. You're not the same sister anymore. You're right, I agreed. I have changed. I'm not going to shrink myself to make you comfortable anymore. The line went silent for a few seconds. When Lily spoke again, her tone was calmer and more controlled. Mom and Dad want us all at dinner this Sunday and they expect you to be there. This was a mandate, not an invitation. Previously, I would have complied automatically. I'll think about it, I responded instead. I have a lot going on right now. What could you possibly have going on? The dismissive tone was so familiar that it almost made me chuckle. Actually, I just interviewed at Innovate Tech. That's some man who intervened at the jewelry store. He arranged it. Another lapse in stillness. You're making that up. Why would I make that up? To sound important, Lily said, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. Nobody gets jobs through random encounters. Believe whatever you want, I responded, growing tired of the conversation. I need to go. If I decide to come Sunday, I'll let Mom know. I hung up the phone before she could speak, feeling a strange combination of loss and liberty. The traditional storyline of our relationship was evolving, and while change was inevitable, it was not without sorrow. My mother texted me on Sunday. Dinner at 5. Dad's making his pot roast. Please be on time and dress nicely. The note made no mention of our heated exchange or the event with Lily. It was as if she expected everything to return to normal with sheer force of will. In the past, I could have complied by arriving with a placating grin and an implied apology in my demeanor. Instead, I wrote back. I'll be there at 5:15. I have errands to run first. A minor insurrection, yet significant. I was no longer accepting their demands without question. I dressed carefully, wearing black pants, a forest green blouse, and, after some contemplation, my new diamond earrings. They caught the light as I turned my head, reminding me of the strength I had discovered at Bellamy's. Whatever happened at dinner, I would not diminish myself just to keep the peace. The drive to my parents' suburban house seemed longer than usual. I practiced potential reactions to allegations, preparing firm yet calm responses to the criticism I expected. My palms were sweating by the time I turned into the driveway at 5:17, but my resolve had not wavered. My father answered the door with a mixture of disgust and anxiety. You're late, he said as a greeting. Hello to you too, Dad, I said, stepping past him into the familiar entryway. The place smelled of pot roast and stress. In the living room, Lily sat on the edge of the sofa, looking through her phone. She looked up as I arrived, her expression tightening. Look who finally decided to show up, she said to nobody in particular. I elected not to participate. Instead, I stepped into the kitchen, where my mother was preparing a salad. She looked up with a strained smile. Katie, good. You're here. Could you set the table? The familiar plea, usually addressed at me and never at Lily, almost had me give in reflexively. Instead, I paused. Actually, Mom, I thought we might talk first about what happened at Bellamy's. Her hands remained still on the salad tongs. I don't think that's necessary. We've all had time to cool down. Let's just have a nice family dinner. A nice family dinner where we pretend Lily didn't slap me in public. Where we act like nothing happened. My mother's smile grew tight. Katie, please. Your sister is under a lot of stress with the wedding planning. Let's not make mountains out of molehills. The downsizing was so foreseeable that it was almost amusing. Before I could reply, Lily arrived in the doorway. Are you still going on about that? It was days ago. 5 days, I said. And yes, I'm still going on about it because no one has acknowledged what actually happened. My father joined us, looking cautious. What's all this about? Katie is being dramatic about our little disagreement at the jewelry store. Lily rolled her eyes. It wasn't a disagreement. You slapped me across the face because I wouldn't let you bully me. Girls, my father interrupted. Let's calm down. And I am calm, I added. I am stating facts. Lily assaulted me in public. A store owner witnessed it and asked her to leave. A complete stranger had to intervene. That man had no right to get involved in family business, my mother stated politely. That man, I said, recognized abusive behavior when he saw it. Something this family seems incapable of doing. A deep quiet descended over the kitchen. My mother's face paled, and my father's brow furrowed into a profound scowl. Abusive? He repeated. That's a serious accusation, Katie. It's not an accusation. It's a description, I said, maintaining my tone. Lily has been verbally tearing me down for years, and you've both enabled it. Tuesday was just the first time it became physical. That is completely unfair, Lily complained. I've always been supportive of you. The apparent alteration of history may have once made me question my own experience. Now it's just cemented my resolve. Name one time I challenged. One specific instance where you supported me instead of competing with me or diminishing my achievements. Lily opened her mouth before closing it again. Her gaze turned to our parents for help. Katie, my mother said, her tone conciliatory. Families have ups and downs. Nobody's perfect, but we love each other, and that's what matters. Love without respect isn't love, I answered. It's control, and I'm done being controlled. What does that mean? My father inquired, his voice rising in anxiety. I took a deep breath. It means I'm setting boundaries. I won't participate in family gatherings where Lily's behavior is excused and mine is policed. I won't pretend everything is fine when it isn't. And I won't apologize for standing up for myself. So, you're giving us an ultimatum? My father asked incredulously. No, Dad. I'm telling you what I need to have a healthy relationship with all of you. What you do with that information is your choice. Lily scoffed. This is ridiculous. You're acting like I committed some horrible crime. It was one slap. One slap is too many, I responded calmly. And it's not just about the slap. It's about years of being treated as less than, of having my accomplishments minimized while yours are celebrated. That's not true, my mother argued. We've always been proud of both our girls. Really? When I told you about my promotion, you barely acknowledged it. When Lily announced her engagement to a man she's dated for 5 months, you threw an impromptu celebration. Is that different? That's different, my father added. An engagement is a life event, and a significant career advancement isn't, I challenged. Or is it just that Lily's achievements align with what you value while mine don't? The question hovered in the air, unsettling in its precision. My mother distracted herself with the salad again, avoiding eye contact. My father shifted his weight, appearing abruptly older. Those are pretty earrings, my mother added quickly, shifting the subject. New? Yes, I touched it reflexively. These are what I was buying when Lily slapped me. They look expensive, she said, her tone indicating displeasure. They were. I could afford them because of my promotion. Well, they're lovely, she said hesitantly. We entered the dining room in tense stillness. As we took our customary seats, I realized my mother had reserved a 5th seat. Are we expecting someone? I inquired. Ethan is joining us, Lily said with a smug look. My fiancé should be part of family dinners, don't you think? The accent on fiancé was intentional. The comparison of her relationship status to mine's single status was such an obvious attempt to reassert superiority that I almost pitied her. The doorbell rang, and Lily got up to answer. She returned a few moments later, accompanied by Ethan, a tall man with a pleasant face and hesitant eyes. He nodded graciously in my direction as Lily led him to the seat beside her. "Ethan, you remember my sister Katie," she replied, her tone implying I was a distant acquaintance rather than an actual family member. "Of course," he said, smiling. "Congratulations on your promotion. Lily mentioned you work in graphic design." "She did." I couldn't contain my surprise. "Yes," he answered. "You're quite talented." I looked at Lily, who had suddenly become quite concerned in straightening her napkin. Had she said anything complimentary about me? "Thank you," I responded, "and congratulations on your engagement." The evening continued with careful conversation, with everyone avoiding the previous incident. My father mentioned an upcoming school board meeting. My mother complained about her boutique's new inventory system, and Ethan discussed a property he was listing when dinner was served. My mom's apple pie was on the table. Ethan spotted my jewelry. "Those are beautiful," he said. "Lily was telling me about your visit to Bellamy's. Quite an upscale place." Lily seemed obviously nervous when I mentioned our visit. I wondered what version of events she had told her fiancé. "Yes, it was my first time there," I said cautiously. "I had an unexpected encounter with Oliver Grant while shopping." Ethan's eyebrows rose. "The Oliver Grant of Innovate Tech?" "The same," I said. "Actually, I interviewed at his company on Friday." "You did?" my mother asked, apparently shocked. "You didn't mention that." "I wasn't sure you'd be interested," I said truthfully. "It's just a career opportunity, not a life event." My father winced slightly when he saw his comments reflected back at him. "Of course we're interested," he replied. "Tell us about it." "So I did," he said, citing the stunning headquarters, Julia Thomas's engaging interview manner, and the innovative work atmosphere. As I spoke, I noticed my family paying close attention for the first time in years. "They said they'd let me know by Wednesday," I added. "It would be a significant step up in both responsibility and compensation." "That's wonderful, Katie," my mother responded, and I was taken aback by her genuineness. "We are proud of you, you know, even if we don't always show it properly." The simple acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to my eyes. It wasn't an apology, but it was the beginning. Lily remained silent throughout this conversation, but as we were clearing the dessert plates, she approached me in the kitchen. "Did you really meet Oliver Grant?" she questioned, her voice too low for our parents to hear. "Yes," I said while rinsing a plate. "He mistook me for his wife at first." Lily remained silent for a bit and then said, "That's actually pretty cool." I stared at her, looking for sarcasm or a concealed barb, but her expression appeared genuine. "The earrings do look nice on you," she added nervously. I shouldn't have made such a scene at the store. It wasn't a formal apology, but coming from Lily was meaningful. I chose to meet her halfway. "Thank you. And your ring is beautiful. Ethan seems like a good person." She nodded, a slight smile on her lips. "He is. He actually lectured me about the slapping thing, said it was unacceptable." "Smart man," I said, shocked and pleased by Ethan's moral sense. "Yeah," Lily confirmed. "Maybe I got lucky with this one." As I drove home that night, I considered the small changes that had transpired. Nothing had been drastically resolved. There were no dramatic group embraces or profound family disclosures, but something had changed in me, and probably in them too. As I drove inside my apartment complex, my phone lit up with a text message. The call was from an unknown number. "Katie, it's Oliver Grant. Julia was very impressed with your interview. Before we make a formal offer, Sophia would like to meet you. She returns from London tomorrow. Lunch on Tuesday. Let me know if you're available." I stared at the message, not daring to believe what it meant. A formal offer from Innovate Tech. As I typed my joyful acceptance, I noticed my reflection in the rearview mirror. The gems in my earrings caught the streetlight and shone like small stars. They were lovely, certainly, but what they signified was far more valuable. I realized my worth was not defined by my sister's opinion or my parents' acceptance. Sometimes the most painful conflicts resulted in the most significant growth. Sometimes a slap in a jewelry store can change the course of a life. 1 month later, I sat at my sleek new desk on the 12th level of Innovate Tech headquarters, finishing up a presentation for the security app launch. My workstation looked out over the metropolitan skyline, and natural light streamed in via floor-to-ceiling windows. A little potted succulent, a welcome gift from my staff, rested next my dual monitors. The adjustment had been quick and exciting. After meeting Sophia Grant, a pleasant, educated woman who had an eerie resemblance to myself from certain angles, I received the formal offer the next day. The income was roughly double what I had been earning at Stonebrook Designs, and the benefits included stock options, flexible work arrangements, and a professional development allowance. Giving Rachel notice had been bittersweet. She had been a supportive supervisor and mentor, but she couldn't deny that the opportunity was too wonderful to pass up. "How did you even get on their radar?" she inquired, genuinely interested. When I told her about the jewelry store incident, she chuckled in surprise. "Only you, Katie, would turn getting slapped in public into a career advancement." My new position as senior creative strategist required both liberty and responsibility. I lead a small team that created the visual identity and user experience for Innovate Tech's consumer goods. The work was both hard and rewarding, encouraging me to broaden my talents while valuing my prior knowledge. Sophia had become an unexpected friend and ally. Despite her wealth and status, or perhaps because of them, she was refreshingly unassuming. We periodically had lunch together in the rooftop garden, where she gave tips for navigating the business world and developing true relationships inside it. "Oliver told me about the problem with your sister, which she had revealed over one such meal. I have a similar dynamic with my brother. It took years of therapy for me to stop seeking his approval. Her candor made me feel less alone in my family problems. It was reassuring to know that even those who appeared to have it all together had their own challenging relationships to handle. Oliver kept a professional distance at work, treating me the same as he would other team members, but he'd occasionally stop by my desk with a meaningful question or suggestion. His mentorship was subtle, yet consistent. The other employees appeared to accept me on my own merits rather than as Oliver's discovery, which was a comfort. At home, I'd moved into a somewhat larger apartment in a building with a fitness facility and community garden. The move had been partially feasible. The new location was closer to Innovate Tech, but it also served as a signal of a new beginning for my professional career. My diamond earrings maintained a special spot in my jewelry box, where I wore them during crucial presentations and to remind myself of my worth. They represented not just a purchase, but a watershed moment. The day I stopped shrinking to fit others' anxieties. My phone vibrated with a text from Lily. Our relationship had entered an unusual new phase. Not precisely, but less aggressive. She waited nearly 2 weeks after the Sunday dinner confrontation to send a brief message. "I've been thinking about what happened. I shouldn't have slapped you. That was wrong. I'm sorry." The apology was brief, but appeared sincere. I had reacted with equal brevity. "Thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate the apology." Since then, we've exchanged a few texts, primarily surface-level updates, but without the competitive undercurrent that had previously marked our conversations. Today's message was more substantial. "Mom's birthday dinner next Saturday, 6 p.m. Ethan and I have news to share. Would like you to be there." I examined the invitation. Family gatherings were still difficult, but each one seemed less unpleasant than the last. My parents had made minor but evident attempts to express interest in my new career and life. My father had even come to my new apartment to help place shelves and express genuine admiration for my professional achievement. "I'll be there," I responded back. "Need me to bring anything?" "Just yourself," was the response, followed by a second message. "And maybe those earrings. Mom mentioned she liked them." The simple acknowledgement made me happy. A month ago, Lily would never have advised I wear something that would attract notice or compliments. I intended to meet Sophia in the lobby at the end of the day. We started taking Friday evening walks through the nearby sculpture garden, where we talked about everything from work projects to book recommendations to family issues. "How was your week?" she inquired as we fell into stride along the tree-lined route. "Productive," I responded. "The security app interface is nearly finalized, and I hired a junior designer who has incredible talent with animation. Oliver mentioned your team is ahead of schedule. He's impressed." I felt a surge of pride at the oblique compliment. "What about you? How was the technology conference?" Sophia discussed her experiences as a keynote speaker, and I pondered on how much my life had changed in just 4 weeks. Beyond the material improvements, better work, nicer apartment, improved financial security, the most significant change occurred internally. I moved through the world with confidence rather than apologizing. The road had not been easy. I'd had several sessions with a therapist, working through the family patterns that had shaped my self-perception. Learning to set limits without guilt was a daily task, but each small win strengthened my resolve. "You seem contemplative today," Sophia said as we stood by a modern sculpture of entwined metal ribbons. "I was just thinking about how different things were a month ago," I told him. "Sometimes I still can't believe that Lily slapping me in Bellamy's led to all this." Sophia grinned. "The catalyst isn't always pleasant, is it? But sometimes we need a shock to break old patterns." "True," I nodded, "though I wouldn't recommend getting publicly assaulted as a career strategy." We both smiled and continued our walk as the sunset light became golden across the grounds. Later that night, while I prepared dinner in my new kitchen, I saw myself humming blissfully. My phone received an email notification. The professional development course I had applied for had been approved. Another minor success. Another step forward. I considered the forthcoming birthday meal with my family. There would most likely be awkward moments, and possibly even conflicts. Lily's news may include a pregnancy, wedding details, or another life event that would reintroduce her into the family story. But that was fine. Her moments of celebration did not diminish mine. There was room for both of our stories. The earrings would accompany me this time, serving as a remembrance rather than armor. A reminder that speaking my truth, even when it was uncomfortable, had resulted in progress I had not expected. A reminder that even the most painful confrontations can provide space for the most profound transformations. My path from that moment at Bellamy's Jewelry to my current life had not been linear or straightforward. The journey to self-worth is rarely clear, but each step was vital. The humiliation of the slap, the unexpected alliance with Oliver, the conflict with my family, the opportunity at Innovate Tech, and the constant effort to preserve boundaries. The diamonds caught the light as I arranged them in my jewelry box for Saturday's dinner. They shined not only due to their intrinsic brilliance, but also because of the story they now held. My tale of discovering value beyond affirmation from others. Sometimes life's most significant lessons are delivered in terrible packages. Sometimes what appears to be an end is actually a beginning. And sometimes when someone attempts to make you feel tiny, the best answer is to expand into your whole amazing self. Caught my spoiled sister kissing my boyfriend a week before her wedding. Told her fiancé, thought he ignored it, but he shocked everyone at the wedding. As a 28-year-old woman, I found myself in a challenging situation involving my 26-year-old sister and my 29-year-old boyfriend. My sister's wedding was fast approaching, and I began to notice that her behavior around my boyfriend was becoming increasingly peculiar. Initially, it wasn't anything overt, just small, subtle actions that left me feeling uneasy. It began with seemingly innocent comments where my sister would often say things like, "Wow, you're so funny," in response to my boyfriend's jokes, even when they were not particularly amusing. She laughed a bit too enthusiastically at everything he said. At first I tried to dismiss it, thinking that perhaps she was just being overly friendly due to the excitement surrounding the upcoming wedding. However, as time passed, I began to notice more troubling signs. She started to find excuses to touch him casually, like placing a hand on his arm during a conversation or lightly bumping into him as she walked past. These gestures were subtle yet unmistakable. I also observed her eyes lingering on him a bit too long when he wasn't looking, which made my stomach churn with discomfort. One evening, after we returned home from a family dinner where my sister had been particularly flirtatious, I decided to talk to my boyfriend about it. I turned to him and asked, "Did you notice how Sarah was behaving tonight?" He looked at me with confusion and replied, "What do you mean?" I then explained the behaviors I had observed, the excessive laughing, the unnecessary touching and the lingering glances. He listened, but after a moment he simply shrugged and said, "I think you're overthinking it. She's probably just excited about the wedding. It's harmless." Despite his reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The situation didn't feel harmless to me at all. Despite my boyfriend's reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. So I decided to keep a closer eye on things, hoping that I was just overreacting and that my suspicions were unfounded. But the next few weeks were tense. Every time we were around my sister, I found myself constantly watching her, noticing every little thing she did. It became clear that she was always trying to position herself near my boyfriend. She would often sit next to him whenever she could, and she seemed to find endless excuses to ask for his help with wedding-related tasks, even when I was standing right there. One day, we were all at my parents' house for a family barbecue. At one point, I went inside to use the bathroom, and when I returned, I saw something that made my heart sink. My sister and my boyfriend were talking quietly in a corner of the yard, standing unusually close to one another. My sister was giggling at something he said, a sound that made my stomach churn with unease. The moment they noticed me, they quickly stepped apart, and my sister walked away as if nothing had happened. I felt a wave of nausea and anger but decided not to confront them on the spot, not wanting to create a scene at a family gathering. Instead, I waited until we got home that night. When we were alone, I tried to approach the topic as calmly as I could. I asked my boyfriend what he and my sister had been discussing earlier. He seemed surprised by my question and explained that they were just talking about some wedding details, like the music selection. His response didn't satisfy me. I couldn't help but question why such a simple conversation required them to stand so close together. He sighed, clearly frustrated, and tried to dismiss my concerns. He assured me once again that there was nothing going on, insisting that my sister was just being friendly. But by this point, I couldn't hold back my feelings any longer. I expressed my frustration, pointing out that my sister was practically throwing herself at him, and he wasn't doing anything to stop it. My words seemed to hurt him, and he looked at me with a pained expression, asking what exactly I expected him to do. He reminded me that she was my sister, and he was simply trying to be polite. Telling her to back off seemed out of the question to him. I told him that he could at least set some boundaries, making it clear that he wasn't interested in anything more than a friendly relationship. But he insisted that he wasn't interested in her at all, claiming there was nothing to clarify because I was seeing problems that didn't exist. Our conversation went in circles, with neither of us willing to see the other's point of view, leaving us both frustrated and unsure of what to do next. After arguing for a while without any resolution, it became clear that our conversation was going nowhere. My boyfriend kept insisting that I was just imagining things, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get him to see what was so painfully obvious to me. In the end, we both went to bed feeling angry and frustrated with the issue still unresolved. The following day, I realized that I needed to confront my sister directly. It was clear that avoiding the issue was only making things worse. So I decided to call her and ask if we could meet up for coffee. She readily agreed, her voice cheerful and seemingly unaware of my growing concerns. We arranged to meet at a small cafe near her apartment. When we met, I was nervous, my hands trembling slightly as I stirred my coffee. My sister, on the other hand, was in high spirits, chatting enthusiastically about her wedding plans. She seemed completely oblivious to my discomfort, which only made the situation more difficult for me. After a few minutes of listening to her talk, I realized I couldn't hold it in any longer. I interrupted her mid-sentence, my voice betraying the seriousness of what I was about to say. I told her that we needed to discuss something important. My sister, caught off guard by the sudden shift in tone, looked at me with surprise and asked what was wrong. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I began to explain. I told her that I had noticed how she had been behaving around Tom, my boyfriend, and that it was making me uncomfortable. I mentioned the flirting, the casual touches, and the lingering looks, things that had been bothering me for some time. I emphasized that her behavior needed to stop. As I spoke, I watched her face transform through a range of emotions. At first, there was surprise, then confusion, and finally, anger. She demanded to know what I was talking about, vehemently denying that she had been flirting with Tom at all. I refused to back down, insisting that she had been doing exactly that, whether she realized it or not. I explained that her actions were not only inappropriate but were also causing me a great deal of distress. She responded with a laugh, though it was far from a genuine one. She told me I was being ridiculous, dismissing my concerns by saying that Tom was practically family and that she was just being friendly. However, her words did little to ease the tension between us, and I could tell that this conversation had struck a nerve. As I sat there, it became clear that this was not going to be an easy issue to resolve, and the rift between us was likely only going to deepen. I couldn't hold back any longer and expressed my frustrations, pointing out that it was more than just friendliness. I explained that she was constantly finding excuses to be near my boyfriend, to touch him, and to laugh at all his jokes, even the ones that weren't particularly funny. To me, it was clear what she was doing, and it was making me increasingly uncomfortable. As I spoke, I could see her face turn red with anger and disbelief. She was clearly shocked by my accusations, especially since they came so close to her wedding. She responded with a sharp retort, questioning my confidence and suggesting that I must be deeply insecure to accuse her of such behavior. Her words stung, but I knew I had to stand my ground. I tried to explain that my concerns weren't about insecurity, but rather about respect. I told her she was crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed, and that her behavior needed to stop immediately. Suddenly, she stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, signaling the end of our conversation. She declared that she wasn't going to sit there and listen to what she considered paranoid and ridiculous accusations. She made it clear that if I couldn't trust my own sister, then that was my problem, not hers. With that, she stormed out of the cafe, leaving me alone with a swirl of emotions. I felt awful and began to question myself. Had I overreacted? Was I really just being paranoid? When I returned home, my boyfriend immediately noticed that something was wrong. He asked me what had happened and I recounted the conversation I had just had with my sister. As I shared the details, I could see the concern growing on his face. When I finished, he let out a heavy sigh and told me that he thought I had made a big mistake. He was worried that Sarah would be deeply hurt, especially with her wedding just around the corner. Feeling defensive, I asked him if he was taking her side. He quickly reassured me that he wasn't taking sides, but he expressed his doubts that Sarah had been flirting with him. Even if she had been, which he found unlikely, he believed that confronting her in such a direct way was not the best approach to handling the situation. His words left me feeling even more conflicted, unsure of whether I had done the right thing or not. As I felt tears welling up in my eyes, I couldn't help but ask, so what was I supposed to do? Just ignore it? The frustration and hurt were clear in my voice. Sensing my distress, my boyfriend walked over and gently wrapped his arms around me. He suggested that perhaps I could have handled things differently, that maybe I could have talked to him more about it first or approached Sarah in a way that was less confrontational. He expressed concern that now, with the way things had unfolded, Sarah was likely upset with both of us, and that this could cast a shadow over her upcoming wedding, making everything feel incredibly awkward. Feeling overwhelmed, I pulled away from his embrace and questioned him. So this is all my fault? I needed to understand if he truly believed that I was to blame for the situation. He sighed deeply, clearly struggling to find the right words, and explained that he didn't mean to place the blame solely on me. However, he did think that I might have overreacted, letting my emotions get the better of me. We continued to argue for a while, but it became evident that we were not going to reach a resolution. There was a clear disconnect in our perspectives, and neither of us seemed willing to fully understand the other's point of view. Eventually, he decided to go to bed, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts and doubts. The days that followed were filled with tension. My sister had stopped speaking to me entirely, creating a painful distance between us. My parents, having noticed Sarah's distress, called me, wanting to know why she was so upset. I tried to explain the situation to them, but I could tell from their responses that they too believed I had overreacted. As the wedding day drew closer, I found myself increasingly uncertain about what to do. I was supposed to be a bridesmaid, an important role that now felt more like a burden. I wasn't even sure if Sarah still wanted me to be part of her big day. My boyfriend, on the other hand, was still invited, and he suggested that we both attend to show that there were no hard feelings. But the thought of standing there, watching my sister walk down the aisle while knowing how angry and hurt she was, made me feel physically ill. The entire situation had become a tangled mess, and I didn't know how to untangle it without causing even more pain. Several times I tried to phone Sarah, but she didn't answer. She never answered when I left voicemails apologizing and stating we should have spoken. I even visited her flat, but she closed the door. My anxiety grew as the wedding day drew near. Though I wasn't convinced, my partner kept urging me to let go, that everything would blow over. In a dream, I showed up for the wedding and everyone turned to stare at me, pointing and murmuring. I woke up shaking coldly. Update. Following my confrontation with Sarah, things deteriorated. When she told our mother about my allegations, she became quite irate. She called me, screaming about how right before Sarah's wedding I could be so selfish and worried. She shouted, "How could you accuse your own sister of such a thing?" She wouldn't listen as I tried to explain my perspective. She advised me to straighten this problem right away and apologies to Sarah. The stress on our family was intolerable. Sarah still avoids talking to me, and right now my parents are offended as well. Tom, my partner, persisted in telling me I was exaggerating, which just made me more depressed and irritated. I visited my parents' place to try to straighten things out 1 week before the wedding. I heard subdued voices coming from the side of the house as I got to the front door. Intrigued, I strolled to the garden and stopped in astonishment at what I saw there. Sarah and Tom were partly concealed behind a big plant. Locked in a passionate hug, they kissed firmly. Sarah's legs were wrapped around Tom's waist, his hand was beneath her top. They were completely absorbed in one another that they failed to even see me standing there. I thought I had been given a stomach punch. All the air left my lungs and for a minute I was unable to move or talk. As the reality of what I was witnessing began to sink in, a powerful wave of anger and betrayal surged through me. My emotions overtook me and I found myself screaming, "What the hell is this?" My voice trembled, thick with the intensity of what I was feeling. The reaction from both of them was immediate. My sister and my boyfriend jumped in shock, their guilty expressions betraying them completely. Sarah's face drained of color, turning pale as she realized she had been caught, while Tom fumbled to find the right words, stammering, "It's not what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. confirming every fear and suspicion that had been gnawing at me. Tears began streaming down my face as I choked out, "How could you? My own sister and my boyfriend." The pain in my voice was unmistakable. Sarah too began to cry, her voice quivering with regret as she tried to apologize. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, struggling to explain. "We didn't mean for this to happen." But I couldn't stand to hear any of their excuses. The betrayal was too deep, too raw. Without another word, I turned and fled, running back to my car. Their desperate calls for me to return fell on deaf ears as I drove away, my mind spinning with disbelief and hurt. As I sped away, my phone began to ring repeatedly, first Tom, then Sarah, and finally my mom. I couldn't bring myself to answer any of them. The pain was too fresh, too overwhelming. When I finally arrived home, I felt numb. I immediately packed a bag with some clothes and the essentials I would need for a few days. I couldn't stay here, not after what had just happened. I sent Tom a final text message, simply stating, "We're done, don't try to contact me again." Then I turned off my phone, cutting off any further communication, and left. Now I'm writing this from a hotel room in a nearby city, unsure of what my next steps should be. With the wedding just a few days away, I know there is no way I can attend. My relationship is shattered, and the bond I once shared with my sister may be irreparably damaged by this betrayal. It feels as though my entire world has been turned upside down. Everyone made me feel like I was crazy for suspecting something was wrong, but in the end I was right all along. The pain of that realization is almost too much to bear, and I find myself questioning how I will ever be able to trust anyone again after this. So Reddit, any advice on how to move forward from here would be appreciated. Update. After the devastating shock of discovering my sister Sarah with my now ex-boyfriend Tom, I spent several days in a fog, struggling to process what had happened. My phone was constantly buzzing with messages and missed calls from both of them, as well as from my parents, but I just couldn't bring myself to respond. I was too overwhelmed, too hurt. Eventually though, I came to see that Mark, Sarah's fiancé, was one person who definitely needed to know the truth. With a heavy heart, I made the difficult decision to call him. When Mark answered, I could hear the confusion in his voice. He asked what was going on, mentioning that Sarah had been in a terrible state, saying that I had disappeared and wasn't responding to anyone. Taking a deep breath, I began to explain everything to him. I told him about the suspicions I had initially had, how everyone, including Tom and Sarah, had brushed off my concerns, and then I described in detail the scene I had witnessed in my parents' garden. Mark listened quietly, not interrupting, only occasionally making a small noise to let me know he was still there, absorbing everything I was saying. When I finally finished, there was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Then in a controlled, measured voice, Mark simply thanked me for telling him, adding that he needed some time to process this information. With that, he ended the call. Afterwards, I sat there, staring blankly at my phone, wondering what Mark would do now that he knew the truth. As the wedding day approached, I heard nothing further from him or from the rest of my family. Sarah had ceased trying to contact me, and I began to suspect that she had somehow managed to convince Mark to forgive her. The thought that she might actually escape the consequences of her actions, that she could go on to have her fairy tale wedding while my life was in shambles, made me feel physically ill. I realized that there was no way I could attend the wedding. The idea of watching Sarah walk down the aisle, knowing what she had done, was too much to bear. Instead, I decided to spend that day alone, focusing on how to rebuild my life in the wake of such profound betrayal. On the evening of the wedding, I received an unexpected call from my cousin, Emma. There was an unmistakable tone of excitement and urgency in her hushed voice as she said, "Oh my God, you won't believe what just happened." Confused and intrigued, I asked her what she meant. Without hesitation, Emma dove into her story, recounting the events that had unfolded. She explained that everything had seemed normal at first. Sarah had looked stunning in her wedding dress, and Mark had been standing at the altar, ready for the ceremony to begin. But when it came time for the vows, Mark had unexpectedly stepped forward and announced that he had something to say. My heart began to race as I listened to Emma describe the scene. Mark, in front of everyone, declared that he couldn't go through with the wedding. He told the guests that he could not marry someone who had betrayed her own sister and devastated her life by getting involved with her boyfriend. Emma continued, recounting how Sarah had turned completely pale at Mark's words. Then, to everyone's shock, Mark turned to my parents and apologized, telling them that they needed to know the real reason why I had distanced myself from the family. Emma went on to say that Sarah had started crying. My parents had been left startled and perplexed, and the guests had started whispering among themselves in an attempt to make sense of things. Mark had then walked out of the church, leaving Sarah sobbing alone at the altar. It was like something out of a movie, Emma told me, her voice still tinged with disbelief. Everyone's in shock. Your parents are trying to get the full story from Sarah, but she's an emotional wreck. As I sat there, absorbing everything Emma had just told me, I felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, there was a sense of vindication, knowing that the truth had finally been revealed. But on the other hand, I couldn't help but feel a deep sadness for the pain and turmoil this had brought upon my family. Emma, sensing my silence, gently asked, "Are you okay?" I'm not sure," I said truthfully. I never wanted it to wrap like this. After a little more conversation with Emma, I hung up and sat silently attempting to sort things. Though at what cost, the truth was out. My friendship with Sarah broke, my relationship with Tom ended, and now my whole family was in crisis. I came to see that although the truth was now clear-cut, it did not instantly correct everything. Healing and regaining trust still lay a long road ahead. But I felt a little relief for the first time since this entire ordeal started. At least now, I could begin to advance free from the weight of silent facts dragging me back. Regarding what next, I'm not sure. Though I know I will eventually have to face my family, right now I am living one day at a time. If nothing else, this encounter has shown me the value of following my gut feeling and defending myself even in front of people who question me. To all who helped me through my journey, thank you. Your words of encouragement have more value than you could possibly know. And to others in the same circumstances, keep in mind. Rely on your gut feeling and resist being gaslighted into disbelieving your own impressions by anyone. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. I was discriminated against all my life because of my golden child sister. Finally, I got my sweet revenge on my wedding day. I faced discrimination my entire life because of my golden child sister, and she even tried to walk down the aisle at my wedding. Finally, I got my revenge. My parents always favored my sister, and it was far from subtle. If she accused me of something, they'd believe her and punish me. But if I accused her, even with undeniable proof, they'd give her a lighter punishment and find a way to scold me too. My birthday cake always had to be her favorite flavor, and my parents pretend they didn't know I hated it. They always bought her more than me and took us where she wanted, even if it was supposed to be about me. My sister grew up spoiled and used me as a punching bag. At first, she mostly ignored me, but things got worse when we were teens. She ended up with no friends, and her behavior deteriorated. Did her friends move away or ditch her because she was mean? I don't know, because we were never close. My parents boasted about her achievements but never mentioned any issues, whereas they constantly highlighted my flaws as teasing material. I only knew she had no friends because we went to the same school, and I noticed she was no longer with people. Meanwhile, I was fairly popular. My sister realized this and suddenly turned me from an occasional punching bag to someone she needed to take down constantly. She started accusing me and my friends of more things. My parents stopped letting me hang out with anyone, with excuses like, "They're not good people according to your sister," or, "Why are you trying to leave us? Why can't you be like your sister and enjoy family time?" What saved me from complete isolation was my extended family. Most of them lived in the same hometown, and I got along well with my cousins despite some age differences. At one gathering, they invited me to something. I don't remember what, and I sadly replied that I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. When asked why, my kid self bluntly said it was because I wasn't allowed to have friends since my sister didn't have any. This got back to the adults, who apparently tore my parents apart later. I was scolded for lying and grounded for a month, but after that, they gave me some leeway, so it was worth it. My sister changed schools. I guess the humiliation of our extended family knowing her social status was too much, so she demanded to switch, and my parents immediately obliged. Even though it cost them more since the school was further away, she made friends at the new school. However, she never went back to mostly ignoring me. Having felt the power to mess with me and being angry that I told the family she had no friends, she never let me go. My life remained difficult. Her friends would come over and bully me, which my parents called light teasing. I never invited friends over because my parents were awful hosts, or my sister would accuse them of stealing, and my parents would believe her. I did become close to my cousins though, as my parents never dared to treat family that way. Then I got my first boyfriend. I didn't want to bring him home, but my parents insisted. At one point we were separated and he came to find me to tell me my sister was flirting with him. She came over in skimpy clothing, batting her eyelashes, and started telling him how bad I was and how good she was. He was irked and ran off to find me. Of course, my sister told my parents a different story, that my boyfriend had tried to flirt with her, but she naturally refused since she couldn't do that to me. Guess who my parents believed? My boyfriend wasn't perfect, but I immediately believed him for a mean reason. Remember, I was a teen suffering from unfair treatment. I was very resentful and moody and hated my sister as much as she hated me. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about looks. I hadn't mentioned them yet because they weren't relevant. My parents were overweight and liked showing love via food, giving more food, buying treats, etc. My sister was also overweight, whereas I was not. I've always been kind of skinny because punishment often included no treats or snacks. Obviously, weight isn't what matters, personality is. But my sister, even then, was already rude and spoiled. Even her flirting attempts were bad because she never learned to work for anything since she could demand, and my parents would deliver. Added to that, the fact that she didn't look like some sexy model, even my self-conscious teen self didn't believe my boyfriend would try and cheat on me with her. Anyway, my parents prohibited me from dating such a horrible boy. I did try to keep going in secret, but it was hard, and the relationship ended. I did get another boyfriend, but again, my sister accused him of flirting with her when he refused her advances. Again, my parents believed her. I tried pointing out how this happened again, but they decided that I was incapable of making good choices and kept picking bad boyfriends. The relationship couldn't handle the Romeo-Juliet situation and fizzled out again. I would eventually get called a slut in high school as I was fine with making out with boys and such but refused to have relationships. Thankfully, it never got back to my sister or parents. My sister did bring one boyfriend home during all this time. He was paraded with pride, and my parents spent every second telling me how good he was and why I couldn't be like my sister and find myself someone like that. Until he stopped showing up and suddenly he was a conniving bastard that tricked my sister. Oh well, and the unequal treatment continued. At this time, she had more spending money, and her curfews were much better than mine. She was free to go anywhere at any time, while I couldn't. If I pointed it out, my parents would say it's because she's older, but when I reached that age, I still didn't have the same treatment she had. And when I pointed it out, they denied they ever said that or claimed it was because I couldn't be trusted like she was, using my sister's accusations against my boyfriends and friends as proof of my bad judgment. Time goes by, and it's time for my sister to graduate. She was accepted into a college, not a very well-regarded one, and she had no scholarship or anything. Again, because only her achievements were told to me, I don't know which colleges she even tried for, so I can't say how badly she was rejected. I do know her grades were bad in school though, because whenever she got a B, we would celebrate. I would usually get good grades, but my parents refused to celebrate, claiming since I always got those, what was there to celebrate? My parents naturally made a lot of fanfare and told her they'd pay for everything. I was relieved she'd be going away. Not that it made my life any easier. She'd always come home every other weekend and somehow stuff kept missing from my room, or some other issue she'd think of to make my life miserable. My curfews were still strict. Eventually, my mom came to talk to me about my impending graduation. I'm only a year younger than my sister. She told me that since they were paying for my sister's college, they had no money to pay for mine, so it would be better for me to start working immediately after graduation and wait until my sister finished university to see if they could afford something for me. Oh, and if I decided to stay at home, I'd have to pay for all my stuff, part of the bills and rent. I pointed out that I could get student loans. Mom said yes, except no, because they were so caring towards me and I had such bad judgment that they would decide if a college was worth my getting into debt or not. I'm not sure how they'd stop me from getting loans, but I didn't ask. Scholarships weren't mentioned. They had no idea what my grades were anymore and never believed in my capabilities anyway. I didn't bat an eyelid. I simply said okay. My mom clearly didn't expect that and kept prying. Maybe she hoped I'd throw a tantrum so they'd have an excuse to never pay for my college, but I said nothing except that I understood their position, thanked them for caring, and that was that. My dad later tried the same, but I also refused to be emotional. You see, after a whole lifetime of their terrible parenting, I never had any expectations towards my education. I knew they would find an excuse to not pay for mine and make my life miserable. I never believed they would eventually pay if I worked and waited for my sister to graduate. I had been preparing for college for a long time. I could barely go out, my friendships were slim, so I had a lot of time to study. And study I did because I saw college as my only chance to be free. Well, the time came, and I worked my ass off and got a scholarship. Not to anywhere like Ivy League or anything like law or medical school, but it was a good enough course in a decent college with a full scholarship. Knowing my sister would hate it and try to stop me via my parents, I put my achievement on social media at the same time I told them, even forcing myself to thank them in the post. Now they couldn't forbid me from going as they'd have to explain to the family why not. Initially, they were even a little proud and boasted about it, and then I guess my sister got to them and they changed gears and even asked me if I was sure I wanted to go. They let slip that my sister wasn't doing well in college, and since she was smarter and had better judgment than me, I'd suffer worse. I obviously stuck to my guns. They weren't happy but couldn't do anything. College was my savior. I started being happy. I still contacted my parents and visited on holidays and such, but since they refused to pay for anything, I could excuse not going a lot due to money. During this time, I avoided introducing any man to them, and my sister stopped going to college. I know she didn't graduate because, again, they'd have made a fanfare about it. She moved back home, paying no bills or rent, but it's different, my parents said, and started working at the same company as my mom, obviously thanks to my mom pulling strings. This was all presented to me as a point of pride. Almost there, I promise. I met my husband around this time. You know those people who say, if I were in that situation, I'd have done something. My husband is the type who actually does. I'm the type who is meek and a doormat in any situation and then can't sleep at night wishing I had done something, had thought of something witty to say, etc. I'm the person who can't help but cry when I'm angry. My husband is the guy who claps back immediately. He loves drama and loves to resolve it. He's the guy that if he doesn't immediately reply to a slight, you better start worrying because he won't forgive and forget, he's just doing something worse for revenge. He's the one who wanted me to post here and wanted to post on a nuclear revenge board too, but decided what we did wasn't nuclear. People were baffled that I got together with him, but just because I was incapable of acting like him due to my upbringing, it didn't mean I didn't like it. I love that my husband does what I can't, and he treats people well as long as they do the same to him. When we discussed marriage, we decided we didn't care much about the ceremony due to our budget as we'd rather spend on a dream trip to Europe for our honeymoon. As for where to do it, since his family was spread out and mine was still mostly concentrated in my hometown, we decided to do it there. We weren't living too far off either, so we could take some long trips during the weekends to manage stuff. Plus, there was some work flexibility, so we could stay in my hometown for a bit too if needed. We sent out the engagement announcement and the save the date for a few months later. At this point, my parents naturally demanded to meet my man. I wanted to grow a spine and refuse, but was having a hard time. The distance had made me think maybe my parents weren't so bad. Well, my husband looked like I had canceled Christmas when I told him I would at least ensure they were never alone with him. See, he had been getting ready for this. He even bought a high-quality recorder he could hide in a pocket to record it all. He was stoked thinking of all the ways he could refuse my sister's advances, insult her, and then spread the recording of her attempts to my family. So off he went alone and excited to meet them, and came back later euphoric. Babe, you won't believe the awful things they wanted. Babe, we can screw them over so bad. There's so many possibilities. I was confused and wanted to hear the recording, but he smartly told me it was better to listen to him first or else I'd misunderstand him. Well, he went there, and instead of flirting, my parents and my sister sat him down. After some grumbling about not being okay with him, my judgment, etc., they proclaimed they were willing to pay for my wedding on one condition. My sister would walk down the aisle. My parents insisted that my sister would walk down the aisle at my wedding first, in a wedding dress. Their excuse was that it wasn't okay for a younger sister to marry first, so it was only fair if my sister at least had the experience of it, at my venue, with pictures being taken, in the dress, and she'd even have a cake later. My husband will now type his part. Hey, vengeful husband here. Hell hath no fury like a pro-revenge instant karma nuclear revenge lurker when his beloved is scorned. That said, as much as my wife, she's my wife now, paints me as this quick-witted dude, I admit my neurons all but short-circuited when those folks legit suggested that crap like some sort of great gift. Even Troy would rather take in the horse a second time, methinks. Alas, after my brain rebooted, I did have a whole list of insults ready to spew out, but something in my soul whispered in my ear like the devil, string these idiots along. So I said I needed to think, see how my wife, back then fiancée, would react, and then ran out of there before I could give away my nefarious plans. Back to me, the wife. So my husband sincerely recounted how my parents wanted even my wedding to be about my sister, with a grin on his face and the recording to prove it. I was shocked. The distance had softened how badly they treated me and I thought even they wouldn't go so far. Thankfully, my husband insisting on the angle of revenge helped me not go to a bad headspace. We had a blast thinking up ways to screw them over, from ridiculously outlandish to what we thought was feasible. We then called his much more level-headed brother when we decided on a plan. It involved having 2 venue addresses, giving them the wrong one, etc. Well, the level-headed brother scolded us for it. While he acknowledged he would never be able to convince us to avoid retaliation, he at least showed us that something like that would be hard to pull off. Some of our other ideas were also at risk of getting us sued, so we eventually settled for the most benign plan: act like we agreed, but then hire security and don't let her in. Obviously, if that was all, it wouldn't be pro-revenge. The rest is mostly my husband's doing, but he wants me to do the honors. So here goes. Just important to mention, everything he did was previously discussed with me, and they were our mutual ideas. He went back to my parents, said he probed and thought I wouldn't be down with it. However, he didn't see the issue and, not wanting the family to fall apart, would be down to help them do it. He pointed out that I don't like conflict, so if I was surprised with it, I might not throw a tantrum in front of all the people. On the other hand, marriage is a big thing, so who knew if I'd lash out? Thus, he suggested a compromise. They'd help pay for stuff. This way, I would feel even more pressure to not say anything, as not only would we be public with our families there, but I'd be grateful for the help they gave. He said my parents looked shocked, and my grown sister literally started skipping with joy like a kid, so it was accepted. Importantly, my husband also claimed that due to some bad judgment and past boyfriends, these words were all my idea and I'm so proud of using their words against them. I was distrustful and controlling and liked to check his phone and stuff to ensure he wasn't cheating on me. As such, it was imperative that nothing of this plan was ever put in writing. For any discussion pertaining to my sister walking down the aisle before me, he'd go over to their house to talk. And so began the months of deception where my parents and sister thought they were tricking me, while my husband and I were milking them. Rather than paying for the wedding, they lay low. Of course, my parents wanted input in everything, including some things that meant a lot to me, like the songs and color palette. My husband would convince them to let it go to keep me in line, but since we never really cared for the ceremony to begin with, everything else was fair game. Or so they thought. Here's what we did. We'd go to check the drink and menu options and then accept the lowest or second lowest priced option. My husband would then secretly take my sister there to try it out and then sigh and say, "It's a pity we don't want to abuse my parents' goodwill, so we won't get the best options." Cue my sister demanding my parents pay for the best. My parents would then tell me not to worry and they'd pay for the most expensive option. The same was done with the photographer and flowers. My husband handed my sister a bouquet of the flowers we wanted and then sadly expressed how I wanted some other tasteless flowers. Cue my parents telling me they wanted us to go with said flowers and they'd pay for it. When it came to the wedding dress, we hit a minor snag. My parents wanted me to use a hideous dress. Okay, it wasn't outright hideous, but it wasn't my style and wouldn't look good on me. We had planned on saying yes and then simply not using it, but my mom sent me a message about it, so there'd be proof I said okay. We had to go with me refusing to text and standing my ground. My husband went over there and said he'd see what he could do. My sister suggested ruining my desired dress so I'd be forced to wear the other one. He pretended to agree. During all this time, they kept communications outside any text. We made sure that happened by having me reply to my sister when she tried messaging my husband. This solidified the uncontrolling and neurotic claims my husband was making, so they believed it and never risked anything in writing. Some people might not like the thought of their partner going around and talking badly about them to family, but I'm such a doormat that the thought of being painted as this controlling and dangerous person is extremely funny to me, and I egged him on to do it. I guess I have a warped sense of humor. Oh, and my sister did try to flirt with him, but he acted conflicted to really sell that he was with them. My husband would pretend to tell them things without my knowledge, but he never told them we hired security. It was really funny. My husband and I, who had sincerely considered a courthouse wedding to focus costs on our honeymoon, ended up having this extravagant, expensive wedding and barely spent a dime. We called it back to pay for emotional damages from my parents. I think my husband, okay, he just confirmed I'm right, was enjoying the whole trick more than planning our wedding. I didn't think it was possible to witness a guy beaming at the thought of wasting his whole Saturday doing a car trip to discuss wedding details with his in-laws, but here we are. Soon the day came. The plan my parents, sister and husband had come up with was to wait until everyone was seated since the bride always comes out late. They'd have my sister arrive at that precise time to avoid me seeing her and trying to stop it, and she'd walk down the aisle. By the time I heard what happened, it would be too late to do anything. As for my dress, we saved some of the leftover fabric from my dress alterations. My husband took that to my parents' place, my sister still lives with them, and showed them as proof he'd ruined the dress, then said he had to go back to me as I was raging and he needed to calm me down. He told them he'd see them at the wedding. We made sure to keep our real security hidden initially. As the guests and my parents arrived, they only saw a woman with a list of names to check. Only after my parents had settled in did we bring out the actual security, a guy who looked like a bodyguard. We instructed him not to let my sister in and promised a generous tip if he kept our instructions confidential. Soon, the moment arrived. My parents got a text that my sister was less than 5 minutes away, so my dad signaled for the ceremony to start. My bridesmaids had been prepped to follow his lead, so they did without checking with me. After they all took their places, my dad stood at the entrance, waiting for me. During this, a friend not in the wedding party texted me to get ready, to avoid suspicion if my husband or bridesmaids started texting. This friend, my husband's ally, was as eager to stir drama as he was and didn't mind not being a bridesmaid. As soon as my dad took his position, the bridal song began. The doors opened and I entered. My dad was shocked to see me. He tried to look behind me but couldn't see the venue entrance from where we were, so he had no idea what had happened to my sister. Then his phone rang. I saw the caller ID, and it was her. He left me with a mumbled, "Something came up." Gasps and confusion filled the room. The friend on the plan loudly asked what happened. I lied and said tearfully, "He told me it wasn't supposed to be me there." My husband and I had agreed that if my dad abandoned me, I should say that to make him look as bad as possible. The tears weren't just acting. I was genuinely hurt and trying not to cry. The friend then loudly asked, "What did he mean by it shouldn't be you?" So that everyone could hear and spread it. Then she said, "I will go and check," and ran off. We planned this so she could create chaos with the security and prevent my dad from returning to stop the ceremony. Eventually, my mom also left. At this point, my husband's dad quickly ran over and took my arm. He'd been forewarned he might need to. His desperate run to me made me smile. I walked down the aisle to whispers as people discussed what had happened. Some left to check as well. When I reached my husband, all was well. He comforted me, joking that my sad face was so real I deserved an Oscar and reassured me he'd deal with my parents for what they did. We got married without any further issues. My parents didn't come back. I noticed a lot of people leaving and returning during the party, but no one dared tell me what was happening. Someone whispered in my husband's ear and he went out. He returned later with a thunderous expression but whispered to me that he needed to go hide before he broke character and started smiling. It worked. Here's the summary from friends, family, the security guy and my husband that I got afterwards. My sister arrived in a wedding dress. The security refused to let her in as we had agreed. He told her she must be at the wrong venue because there was already a bride. Yes, we tipped him very well as promised. My dad tried threatening him with the police, claiming he'd never heard of him, so he couldn't be working there. The security agreed to call the police since he was hired by us and was just doing his job. My dad realized it would be too late and tried to demand that he let my sister in. At this point, the friend came over, started shouting and insulting my sister, and asking what was going on, basically stalling. My mom soon arrived, followed by others. By then, the wedding plan was ruined. All my parents could do now was damage control, as everyone who learned about it was horrified they'd try to pull it off. People started screaming and berating them. The three naturally said it wasn't a secret and blamed my husband. When he was called over, my husband put on his best confused look and denied everything. To quote him, "Gaslight, gatekeeper, girl boss, LOL." He denied ever agreeing to such a ridiculous plan. When they insisted he demanded proof, and of course, they couldn't provide any. All the text exchanges they could show were about normal wedding decisions. My sister was scream-crying and apparently sat on the floor kicking her legs like a child. My dad looked like he wanted to hit my husband, but security and other people held him back. Naturally, they claimed they had no proof because my husband told them not to text. My husband laughed and said, "Wow, how convenient, huh?" Then he repeated, "Why would I ever agree to something so messed up?" He ripped into them about being terrible parents and said he wasn't going to let their stupid plans and lies ruin his wedding, then went back to me. No one believed them. The venue had cameras, but they wouldn't show me the recording as it was only for security purposes. However, some people filmed parts of it. Watching my parents and sister get torn apart by everyone who came out to see the drama was delightful. After years of being accused of things and not being believed, seeing them get a taste of their own medicine was one of the best wedding gifts. My mother was crying, my dad kept changing from purple to white, and my sister was still on the floor crying and screaming. They kept insisting that my husband was in on it, but people kept asking why he would agree, why there was no proof, and why they wanted my sister to do this at my wedding. They had no good answers. Eventually, they were told to leave and had no choice but to do so. My dad apparently had to drag my sister up as she refused to leave the ground. Again, people said nothing to me all night. I guess they wanted to spare me, and maybe it's because I was the bride and not just a guest for once, but it did feel like everyone was making an extra effort to be nice, positive, and excited about everything. My husband says all the expensive food and drinks they were eating certainly helped. LOL. We had a blast. My husband kept up the forced angry face for only a short while before breaking out in smiles again. After that, we went to the hotel to catch some sleep before heading off on our honeymoon. Speaking of which, my parents did try to pay for our plane tickets, but we thought that was risky as they could try to cancel them or something, so we refused. Since then the three of them have tried to contact me. I've refused calls because my husband insisted on keeping a paper trail, a smart move because my sister eventually messaged me. I won't repeat what she said as it was very unhinged and didn't make much sense, but the important part was that she blamed me for her humiliation. Called my husband a two-faced snake who fooled them for months. He wants to print and hang that on our wall, LOL. And hoped, but was also certain, that I'd get cheated on by him. She even suggested he was cheating on me with her. My husband took my phone, screenshot the call logs, my sister's messages and some messages from my parents demanding I pick up the phone, and sent it all to our family group chat. He also sent screenshots of messages to him where they called him names and threatened him, but he kept up the "you're delusional, I never agreed to anything" shtick and even threatened to sue them for defamation and harassment. He wrote a message in the group chat begging my family for help as I was now being harassed by them constantly. He pleaded with them to stop my parents and sister from ruining our honeymoon after they failed to ruin our wedding. He ended with a request that they not share our locations to prevent my parents from sending my sister over and claiming he had somehow agreed to pretend to sleep with her in our honeymoon suite, LOL. My family assured him they'd handle it, and since then, we've had peace. My husband is a bit disappointed that my sister didn't disobey so he could call her out again while tearing her a new one. We'll see if the peace lasts. All in all, while I would have preferred a normal, loving family at my wedding, at least for once in my life they not only failed to ruin something meaningful to me, but I got back at them. Extra info: do I know why they treat me like this? I've been asked this question a lot, so I assume you all will wonder the same. I've pondered this all my life and still don't know. I tried asking when I was young, but they denied any difference and scolded me for being spoiled, so I stopped trying. I've considered many possibilities, but based on my observations I think it's this. I was unplanned. They took a while to have my sister, so she was not only wanted but also like a miracle child after so long. However, given our small age difference, I think they didn't expect to have another child so soon or easily and didn't use adequate protection after my sister's birth. Maybe they didn't realize my mom was pregnant until it was too late, so they were saddled with an unplanned baby while still dealing with a newborn. They're not well off, so having the extra expense likely didn't help, and they resented me. But that's just my conjecture. Regardless, I've accepted that the reason won't truly matter. What they did to me was unwarranted, no matter what. Did they really think this would work? My husband and I have a theory that they never intended to do this at all. We think my sister threw a tantrum over me getting married first when she barely gets dates, and they made my husband that outlandish proposition. They didn't want to pay for my wedding and didn't think we'd accept or that it would even look good for them to do it. By suggesting it and being refused, they could look like the good guys to my sister while having an excuse not to give me a dime. But then my husband accepted it and they couldn't backtrack without risking my sister turning on them. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Excluded from my sister's wedding, I went on vacation. When the wedding fell apart, my whole family frantically tried to reach me. "You're overreacting. It's just a wedding," my mother said. I was not invited to my own sister's wedding. Instead, I scheduled a trip. Days later, my relatives blew up my phone. I sat there, staring at my screen, reading the message for the 5th time. "Hey, just wanted to let you know the guest list is finalized and we had to make some tough cuts. Hope you understand. Love you." Tough cuts. Tough cuts. I wasn't some distant cousin. I wasn't an old family acquaintance whom they hadn't seen in years. I was her brother. And my sister, the same sister I had assisted through every crisis, heartbreak, and moment of self-doubt, had just cut me out as an afterthought. I glanced at the screen, a slow pang of unbelief spreading into my chest. I nearly laughed, because this had to be a mistake. I took up the phone and called my mother. She responded on the second ring, her voice upbeat. "Hey sweetheart, what's up?" I didn't bother making small talk. "I just got a message from Emily. She says the guest list is finalized and I'm not on it." There was a pause. Just long enough to prove what I had previously suspected. Oh, honey, my mother sighed. She always used that voice to make me feel like I was being unreasonable. It's just a wedding. Don't make a big deal out of this. Just a wedding. I felt a hot stinging coil in my stomach. Are you serious? I asked, my voice unusually calm. Mom, I'm her brother. How am I not invited to my own sister's wedding? She produced a tisk sound, as if I were a toddler having a tantrum. It's not personal. They had to keep the guest list small and… Mom. I cut her off. I just saw Emily's Instagram post. She invited 150 people. Silence. Then, a forced chuckle. Well, you know how things are. Weddings are expensive. And maybe they assumed you wouldn't mind skipping this one. I felt like I had been hit in the stomach. Wouldn't mind? I asked. Mom, I've been there for Emily through it all. I helped her relocate twice. When she lost her job, we covered half of her rent. And I was the one who helped her get over her last breakup. But now I'm not good enough to be there on her special day. Oh, stop being dramatic, my mother remarked with a sigh. It's just one day. You're overreacting. I laughed briefly and without humor. Overreacting, right? I could already predict how things would go, I would argue. My mother would shrug me off. Emily would certainly provide a half-hearted apologies later. I'd be expected to forgive and forget. Because that is what I have always done. Not this time. Something within me cracked. If I wasn't worthy of inclusion, then fine, I would not be. I hung up without saying anything and began browsing through my phone. If I wasn't planning to attend Emily's wedding, then I was going to be somewhere much nicer. I was going on a vacation. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I wasn't the type of guy who got upset over trivial matters. I had previously let a lot slide. Emily had repeatedly forgotten my birthday. She would only call me when she needed something. Our mother always wanted me to be the understanding one. Emily managed to get away with murder. But this was an entirely new level of disdain. I wasn't going to sit around moping while my sister and the rest of the family played happy little wedding without me. If I wasn't significant enough to be featured, then I wasn't significant enough to be present when they needed me. I grabbed my laptop and began looking up flights. If Emily could have the happiest day of her life, then I planned to enjoy the best week of my life. It took less than an hour to plan. I reserved all-inclusive accommodations at a 5-star resort in the Caribbean. Suite with an ocean view, spa services, and access to a private beach. I had always convinced myself that such a trip would be too pricey. Not this time. I wasn't just traveling for a holiday. I was making a statement. When the wedding weekend came around, I was already on a plane, enjoying champagne in first class. I made sure to upload a picture, legs extended out, drink in hand, with this caption. Guess I got cut from the guest list, but I think I'll survive. The reactions were nearly immediate. Some of my cousins sent laughing emojis. My aunt, the only rational member in the family, commented, "Good for you. Should have taken me with you." But what's the best reaction? That came from my mother. She sent me 3 texts in a row. Mom asks, "Where are you?" My mom. "Are you seriously missing your sister's wedding over this?" Mother. "You're being petty." Petty? I wasn't even close to finishing. I responded with a photo of the beach, complete with white sand, crystal blue ocean, and a postcard perfect view. Then I shut off the phone. I wasn't about to let them guilt me. Not this time. For the first time in many years, I was not putting my family first. I was putting myself first. And it felt incredible. By the time I arrived in paradise, I had entirely eliminated any lingering remorse. The moment I walked out of the airport, the warm ocean breeze touched me, bearing the aroma of salt and tropical flowers. A private car was waiting to drive me to the resort. A stylish black SUV with chilled towels and bottled water in the backseat. Yeah. This was far better than a wedding. As we drove down the coast, I reflected on how right I had been to accomplish this. Back home, my family was presumably busy preparing for the big day. My mother was probably making excuses for why I wasn't present. My sister was laughing with her bridesmaids, not giving me a second thought. But I wasn't treated as an afterthought here. Here, I was the priority. My priority. The resort was something out of a fantasy. The lobby has enormous palm trees blooming within. A massive open-air architecture that allowed in the ocean wind. And the kind of service where you were greeted with a cocktail before you checked in. My room? Unreal. Floor-to-ceiling windows and a private balcony and the most gorgeous king-size bed I'd ever seen. I threw down my things, strolled out onto the balcony, and simply took it all in. Then, just to make matters worse, I took a picture of the scenery and shared it with this caption. When one door closes, another one opens, preferably to a beachside suite with unlimited margaritas. I knew it would find its way back to my family, and honestly, I hoped it did. Because for once, they could understand what it was like to be left out. And I was only getting started. The first full day of my trip was simply fantastic. I began the morning with room service, which included fluffy pancakes, fresh fruit, and coffee that was so wonderful it ruined every cup I'd ever tasted. Then I spent the entire day doing precisely what I wanted. No responsibilities. There's no family turmoil. Just me, the ocean, and a timetable focused only on my own enjoyment. By the afternoon, I was lounging on a sunbed by the infinity pool, martini in hand, watching the waves roll in. Every so often, I'd check at my phone, not to check in with my family, but look at the growing amount of responses to my vacation blogs. The comments were gold. Cousin Jake. Bro, where are you even? Aunt Lisa. Okay, now you're just showing off. An old college acquaintance says, dude, invite me next time. Finally, I received a notification that made me smirk. Emily saw your article. Oh, now she was paying attention. I could just imagine her reaction, sitting in the bridal room, sipping inexpensive champagne, scrolling through Instagram only to see me having my best life while she is anxious about her wedding. Good. I leaned back, took another sip of my beverage, and thought, enjoy your special day, sis. I hope it's all you wanted. However, when the sun began to set, something unusual occurred. My phone started to explode. Initially, I ignored it. I figured it was just more people reacting to my photos. But then I noticed these names. Mom. Emily. Cousin Jake. Even Uncle Rob. Call after call. Texts are coming in non-stop. I raised an eyebrow and eventually opened my phone. The first text I saw was from my mother. Mother. Call me. It's an emergency. Is there an emergency? Attending the wedding? I sighed, debating whether I really cared. Jake then sent another message. Jake's reaction. Dude, you are not going to believe what just happened. Oh, now I was curious. I sat up and scrolled through the texts. And I quickly understood that the universe had given me the nicest wedding gift I could have ever hoped for. Because as it turned out, Emily's beautiful wedding had gone up in flames. I scanned through a torrent of messages. My sneer grew with each one. Jake replied, Bro. You dodged a bullet. Mother. Call me right now. This is a family crisis. Emily, please. Where are you? I need you. I stretched out in my lounge chair. I took another drink of my cocktail, and continued scrolling. Then I discovered a message that made me laugh out loud. According to cousin Melissa, the groom simply walked out. I almost choked on my drink. Did the groom leave? Oh, this was better than I could have expected. Curiosity got the best of me, so I eventually texted Jake back. My response? What do you mean he left? Jake. Dude, during the reception, full meltdown. He and Emily had some huge fight and then he just walked out. Straight up left the venue. Jake, again. Oh, and then Uncle Rob and Dad got into a screaming match over who was ruining the family's reputation. Grandma cried. The venue cut the bar early. It's a mess. I leaned back, smirking. My sister had refused to let me attend the wedding, believing that she didn't need me. And now? Suddenly, I was the first person they all ran towards. I could already hear my mother's voice in my brain. You need to fix this, Emily is devastated. Yes, no thanks. I opened the following message. It came from Emily. Emily says, answer your phone. Please, I need you. Oh, suddenly I was significant. I took a deep breath and typed back a single response. Me. Sorry, I'm a little busy enjoying my overreaction. Hope the wedding was fun. And then, I blocked her phone number. I blocked my mother. I also blocked Jake, just in case he got drawn into their guilt trip operation. Then I turned my phone to do not disturb mode, waved over the bartender, and ordered another drink. Because, while my family spiraled, I was in paradise. And for once, I wasn't bothered. The following morning, I awoke to the sound of waves breaking on the shore. The aroma of sea and tropical flowers wafted through my open balcony doors. I stretched and yawned. And for one lovely minute, I almost forgot about the pandemonium at home. Almost. Then I looked at my phone. Even though I blocked the majority of my family, I still had more than 20 missed calls from random numbers. They tried everything to contact me. Several voicemails had slipped through. Despite my better judgment, I pressed play on the first one. Mom's voice, frantic. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is not the time for one of your tantrums. Your sister is devastated and we need you here. This family needs to stick together right now. I rolled my eyes before deleting it. Next voicemail. Emily is crying. I don't understand why you're doing this. You're my brother. I need you. Please, just call me back. Click. Deleted. The following one had me laughing. Jake whispered as if he were hiding in a closet. Dude, Mom and Aunt Lisa are planning to show up at your apartment when you get back. Just a heads up. Also, Grandma keeps saying the wedding was cursed because you weren't there. It's hilarious. Was that a voicemail? I've saved. I tossed my phone on the bed and stepped out onto the balcony. The sun had just begun to rise, creating a golden glow over the ocean. I took a deep breath, allowing the warmth of it to sink in. Back at home, my family was scrambling to perform damage control. Meanwhile, I was here, sipping espresso while wearing a bathrobe, enjoying the best decision I'd ever made. And the best part? They were now feeling what I had felt when they cut me out. Unwanted. Forgotten. Left out. It was rather poetic, actually. But I wasn't finished yet. I grabbed my phone. I took a photo of my breakfast, which included fluffy pancakes, fresh fruit, and a mimosa that was so brilliant it might blind someone. And posted it with this caption. Starting my day stress-free. Hope everyone back home is doing okay. Then, just for fun, I went through my blocked messages, grinned at all of the missed calls, and ordered another mimosa. I didn't intend to call them back. Allow them to clean up their own mess. I was on vacation. By midday, I was relaxing under a secluded cabana, sipping a tropical drink with an umbrella when my phone vibrated again. This time, the message came from cousin Melissa. Melissa. Okay, I know you're mad. And honestly, you deserve to be. But you have to hear what happened after the wedding. Call me. You're going to love this. I raised an eyebrow. Melissa has always been the only cousin with a brain. If she mentioned that I needed to hear anything, it was probably worth the time. So, despite my better judgment, I called her. She answered the first ring. Oh my God, you're finally answering, she said, unable to contain her joy. Okay, are you sitting down? I gazed about in my shaded cabana, the vast ocean in front of me and the chilled beverage in my palm. Yeah, I think I'm in a good place for whatever this is. Melissa let out a breathless laugh. Okay, after the groom left, Emily had a complete meltdown. And I don't mean a few tears. I mean yelling, wailing, and throwing objects at the wedding party. I smirked. Sounds about right. Melissa continued, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. Everyone was attempting to calm her down. Mom overheard Aunt Lisa suggest that the disaster could have been avoided. If you'd been there? I blinked. Wait, what? Melissa giggled. Yes, she was saying that you've always been the one to mend problems when Emily spirals. That if you were present, you would have talked sense into the groom or handled everything like you normally do. I burst into laughter. So let me get this straight. The same family that barred me from the wedding is now blaming me for not being present to preserve it. Oh, it gets better, Melissa remarked. Mom told Lisa she was acting ridiculous. And then they started fighting, loudly. Then Grandma became involved, saying Emily brought this on herself, because she offended the cosmos by not inviting her brother. I almost choked on my drink. Melissa was cackling now. Grandma lectured Emily in front of everyone, stating, if you had treated your family better, you wouldn't be alone in your wedding dress right now. I leaned back smirking. Wow, that's beautiful. Oh, and then, Melissa said. Your mother attempted to contact the groom's family to resolve the situation? His mother just smiled and said, this is your issue now. I had to set down my drink before I spilled it from laughing so hard. So, I said, collecting my breath. Where does that leave Emily? Melissa sighed. Still weeping. Still blaming everyone except herself. Last I heard, she was trying to save the wedding with some sort of backup plan. But let's be honest, she's not going to recover from this. I shook my head grinning. You know what the best part is? What? I took a slow sip from my drink. I don't care. Melissa roared with laughter. Honestly, I don't blame you. I just thought you'd appreciate knowing that karma did its job. Oh, I love knowing that, I remarked, smirking. Thanks for the update, Melissa. No problem, she replied. Enjoy your trip, and for the record, you did the right thing. I hung up, more satisfied than I had been in years. They wanted a wedding without me. And now, thanks to their own selfishness, they had a disaster instead. I grabbed up my drink and raised it to the heavens. And I toasted to the best decision I've ever made. Then I turned off my phone and relaxed back in my cabana. Let the beach air sweep away the rest of my shame. For the remainder of the day, I didn't look at my phone. Instead, I scheduled a sunset cruise. Allow the warm breeze to wash over me, and had a 5-star meal by the seaside. My family was still picking up the pieces from Emily's wedding tragedy. I was enjoying the greatest steak I'd ever had. At some point, a notion occurred to me. Perhaps I should feel sorry for her. Then I remembered how she left me out without hesitation. Yes, no. I took a sip from my wine. I took one last shot of the view, and shared it with one caption. 0 regrets. Finally, with a contented smile, I turned off my phone again. Let them stew, I was done being their backup plan. The following morning, I awoke feeling lighter than I have in years. There is no guilt. There will be no tension. There were no last-minute family emergencies that became my job to solve. Just myself and the sound of waves. And an entire day of nothing but rest. I stretched, ordered room service, and, out of curiosity, I turned my phone back on. A big mistake. Within seconds, my notification surged. Mom said, "You need to stop acting like a child and call me." Emily's response. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. You are so selfish. Your mother. This isn't funny." Emily is heartbroken. "Do you even care?" Unknown number, possibly my aunt. "We need to fix this family before it's too late." I groaned and shook my head. It was almost surprising how swiftly they moved from ignoring me to expect me to cure everything. Then, one message struck my attention. Melissa. "Okay, I understand you are ignoring everyone, but please read this. Your mother is trying to gather the family for a discussion when you return. Just a heads up." I almost laughed aloud. Oh, they assumed I would return as if nothing had happened. As if I'd just come up and let their guilt trip me. And pretend the entire thing never occurred. Yeah, not happening. I quickly replied to Melissa. Thanks for the warning, but I won't be there. Melissa says. Wait, what do you mean? Me. I'm extending my trip. They wanted to cut me out? Okay. I'm cutting myself off altogether. I could almost see her reaction. A combination of astonishment and amusement. A few seconds later, she responded. Melissa. Okay, that's iconic. Tell me everything when you get back, whenever that is LOL. I grinned, set down my phone, and grabbed up my laptop. With a few clicks, my trip was officially extended. Another entire week. There's no family. There's no drama. No family discussions. Just me and the water. They never allowed me to have peace. And the best part? They couldn't do anything about it. Before going to the beach, I sent one final text. Me, Mom, and Emily. Oh, so you want me around? Sorry, I'm too busy enjoying my reactions. Have fun cleaning up your own messes. Then, for the last time, I blocked their numbers. I put my phone down. Ordered another drink. Let the sun warm my skin. There is no guilt. There will be no tension. No regrets. Just peace. And it was the best decision I've ever made. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.